just like wondering what would be an example of what they'd say to someone to join. We're a great group of guys, like we're bonded.
You
Oh,
giving off
they
fair,
got some
you know,
cold
fair vibes,
slogans.
bro.
Yeah, I want to hear some slogans.
Yeah.
Explain it like it's a fraternity to Billy,
Yeah.
and Billy's rushing. Welcome back to Macrodosing. What's up, Macrodosians? It's Thursday right now. It is June 15th. All right, we're back. We got the whole squad here. We got Arian in Houston. We got the rest of us in studio here in New York, and we're going to have what I hope will be a great interview with Glasses Malone. If you've ever wondered about the history of Los Angeles Crips, Glasses Malone is going to be on the show to discuss it with us. I'm very, very excited because Arian, much like you know what I've gotten into recently?
What's that?
I've been watching a ton of documentaries about drill rap in Chicago.
Oh, it's interesting shit.
Ton. Just fascinating stuff. Learning about King Von, learning about Tuka, the whole backstory and the drama behind the scenes. King Von, and I've never really listened to that much King Von before, and I've started to. He was insanely talented. Just like a great storyteller as a rapper. Also maybe one of the biggest pieces of shit ever. Like a serial killer.
Yeah, so that was like a debate, right? It was a debate because one of the biggest documentaries was called like Trap Law or something by this dude, like a UK who's obsessed with like American gang culture. So he does all kinds of like videos on it, which is kind of weird in itself. Somebody needed to ask him about that. But the debate was like, is King Von a serial killer? And if you go by the definition, somebody who's killed 3 or more people, then yeah, he was a serial killer. But I would put an asterisk in that because it's not the same as just killing people to kill people. It is directly tied, and it's actually kind of tied to what we're talking about today. It's like it's directly correlated with the environment in which they are raised, in which drugs are involved, territories involved, and social clout behind those kind of things are prevalent. So it's like an environmental factor in which I feel like if he was raised in the suburbs, I don't think he would murder anybody. But again, it's a hot take, but I don't.
Maybe not, but he also got like an insane amount of joy out of killing people and of like celebrating how he killed them and like going over the top, almost like he was an internet troll that also killed people in real life.
Well, it's what exacerbated the Chicago drill scene was making music and expressing detail about how and who you killed, right? It's what exacerbated that entire Chicago war. But the war was going on before the music, right? And so social media introduced an entirely new aspect of it in which people were more brazen about admitting it and doing it in a way in which it taunted the other side, which again put more, fans on the flame. And so again, I think if you take a lot of these kids, I can't say to all of them, but I think if you take a lot of these kids out of their circumstances, they don't kill people. But it's an environment and a culture that they grew up around to where it was normalized. And so I don't look at it like you look at it. I look at it like they were doing it for a survival thing. Like if I don't get one of them gonna get me. And so that aspect is entirely different. I likened it to, and I get a lot of shit from Republicans when I say this, but like, so that great American sniper that we heroize, right?
Chris Kyle.
Yeah. He's a serial killer. He's a serial killer. He's killed multiple people. He was doing it in a war that was illegal and unjustified, and he was good at it and partly took joy in it. Same concept. I don't know if you take him out of that environment, does he still kill? I don't know. But he was in an environment where the murders were justified and not only justified, it was heralded. Like we he's an American hero, but he was killing people.
That's like that line from The Sopranos where they're seeing if all their kills, like if they're gonna get to heaven. It's like, no, it's war. We're like soldiers. And like for example, there was a hitman for the mafia. Actually, Stone Cold based his character on it, the Iceman.
Yeah,
he was actually a serial killer that the mafia was like, oh, this guy's a serial killer.
we can harness that.
Let's just make him one of our hitmen.
Yeah,
Which that's different than that, but like the Iceman would have been killing people whether or not he was involved with the mafia.
Yeah, I mean, what King Von did in Chicago is like, yeah, you could draw a direct line definitely to, you know, Sopranos or to the actual Italian mafia as well. And those guys are probably also part of their circumstances. Yeah, okay, we came up in a tough neighborhood in New York in the 40s or whatever, and we did what we had to do to survive with our families. But it's almost like a reality show. If you follow with everything that they put on social media in that scene and like all the clues that they leave in their songs and shit, it does become, it's like Vanderpump Rules.
Yeah,
except just to the most violent degree possible. But there's a fascination that draws people in. Like I didn't start listening that much to King Von's music until I started learning about the person and about like what he did and what he represented, and then listening to his music and you're like, oh shit, this is real life. Like he is almost like a WWE character come to life.
Yeah. I mean, I did a lot of research into it when we were looking up Young Dolph, the Memphis rapper. Turns out Young Dolph used to ride around Memphis in camo wrapped vehicles. And we happened to pull into a Memphis gas station one day on the way to LA to the Super Bowl in a camo wrapped truck. And we turned some heads in not some great ways, but I started researching a little bit into that because he was killed. And, you know, I think we may have been looked at by some of his ops and they're like, is this guy King Von? And they see PFT and I walk out and they're like, oh.
I mean, Young Dolph.
Young Dolph, I mean. I get them mixed up, sorry.
Yeah, people probably thought that we were Young Dolph.
Yeah.
Stepping out of that truck.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, wait.
Yep.
It's these two guys.
All right, so on this show, Macrodosing, we've been beating this drum for the last 2 years. Weed is too strong. Weed has gotten too strong. Bring back mids. We miss mids. I miss being able to smoke weed and then just hang out and enjoy my life. I don't want to have to smoke and take more than like 2 puffs and then I have to sit on my couch for 9 hours until I'm not high anymore, just staring at the ceiling. I don't want to get anxious. Maybe this is a boomer take on my part, but there are people that agree with me. There was an article that came out yesterday that Big Pharma has now gotten involved, and Big Pharma is making a new drug called AEF 0117, and it's been tested to reduce marijuana's perceived positive effects, the feeling of being high, by up to 38% by researchers at Columbia University. I don't like the idea of taking a drug to make my current drug less strong, but I would like to be, that's about the exact number. I would like to be 38% less high every time that I smoke.
But
exact number.
Yeah.
I read, isn't this to prevent addiction?
It's
physical addiction.
It's also because weed has gotten too strong.
Niggas is addicted to weed?
If you look at it, it's about, I know they say that weed isn't addictive, but anything is physically addictive.
No, anything you can become like emotionally, I guess, dependent on weed. You can become psychologically dependent on it.
It's like how people get addicted to food.
You can't get physically addicted on
it. But
no,
there's chemical reactions to food getting you addicted, like sugar and stuff like that. That's a chemical reaction. I was unaware of the chemical action of weed. I don't know. I'm not saying I do know, but I'm unaware of the chemical reaction that has addictive properties to weed.
Yeah, I feel like weed is, I mean, we all know somebody that has gotten really, really into weed, and weed becomes the most important thing in their life by far.
Yeah, there's people who just high 24/7.
High 24 hours a day. Yeah. It's not physically
really a bad thing. I know dudes who do that who are Grammy winners. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's true.
Very productive human beings. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but
that's true. But there are also a lot of people that get super high all the time, and that's all they do, and they don't do anything besides that. So it's not like a one size fits all thing. But yeah, this pill makes people 38% less high. Again, just bring back mids. Give me some mids. I miss mids. Me and mids were cool. Nothing better. Like I used to really enjoy getting slightly high and then going out with friends. That was fun. Now it's like, can you imagine just, smoking an entire joint or entire blunt and then going out and just hanging out with your friends in a bar somewhere? It'd be the worst thing ever. And I'm sure some people like it. Some people enjoy it a lot. I don't. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's a me problem. Maybe I am the only person on earth that would actually like to take this pill. Although, again, taking a drug to decrease the quality of another drug that you're taking seems a little bit backwards.
They have like percentages of like if you go to like dispensaries, they'll have like 0.05 THC or 3.2 THC or whatever the case is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they do, but it's also an arms race. So nobody out there is like making mids. That's not like a popular thing people are buying. They want to make drugs they want to make weed that's stronger than the other guy to
faster,
get you.
Stronger.
It's like in if you go to microbreweries, everybody's like, well, ours has like, we call this the quintuple hopped IPA, the monster IPA. It's just we're gonna fucking destroy you with hops.
But like that's weird because that's just like flavor, and no one's really upping the alcohol above 10%.
Yeah, because I think it becomes barley wine at some point, or it becomes classified as not beer anymore.
And then you can't like sell it with a certain liquor license.
Yeah, it's like NC-17 movies.
Like breweries, I think there's a lot of breweries that don't have full bars because they technically only sell beer and wine, and that like puts them in a different level of liquor license.
It's a different level to get, yeah. But I just want to say I'm in favor of bringing back mids. I hope we don't have to turn to another drug company. I don't want to have to like go to that would be an embarrassing trip to the pharmacy to get, can I have my pill to make me less high, please? Because I can't handle it. We have a special guest coming on right now. I think I see him in the waiting room. So let's bring him on the show. This interview with Glasses Malone is going to be brought to you by Hey Dude. Hey Dude makes one of the world's most comfortable shoes that are so comfortable they make your feet and they make your day better. Right now, they have an awesome offer. It's a kind of sale that only happens a few times a year from June 11th through June 24th. You can get 25% off almost everything at heydude.com using Dude25. I own a pair of Hey Dudes. Billy, I know you do too.
Let me hijack this ad because I feel very strongly about Hey Dudes.
You take it.
If you're looking for the perfect shoe to get your father for Father's Day, look, I've already done it. Get Hey Dudes. They're going to rock them all the time. Not only are they stylish, but they are such a perfect utilitarian shoe. I love them so much. I've been wearing my pair like under docks, in formal settings, to work every day, literally to chill. I've even worked out in them. They're amazing.
You can slip them on too. No tying necessary. They're super comfortable shoes. Wear them around the house, wear them out to work, wear them wherever you want. They're such good shoes. I'm not even kidding. They're so lightweight too. Feels like you're not even wearing shoes, but you got the super comfortable Hey Dude shoe. You've got it's like the sole of it. I don't know what they make the sole out of.
It's beautiful.
But it's like beautiful and it's massaging your feet, it's basically
like
what you watch. It's like walking through space.
Yeah.
Your feet are in space.
Socks, no socks. There's no rules.
Either way, they've got tried and true styles. The Wendy for girls. They've got the Wally for guys. They also have expanded silhouettes available, including sandals, slides, sneakers, and slip-ons. I love the ones that I have. You just slip your feet right into them. You need to run outside real quick. Perfect shoe to put on. The fastest shoe to put on in the world. Hey Dudes. You guys will like them. Check them out. Just do me a favor. Go to heydude.com and just look. Just peruse around if you're looking for a gift for your dad, for your brother, for your sister, for your mom. Doesn't matter. Check out Hey Dudes. Get one for yourself. Get a pair for yourself. I love my Hey Dudes. They're my go-to shoe. They're my go-to shoe. If I'm just looking for something to put on quickly, comfortably, simply, easily, Hey Dude, and they're also extremely comfortable, and we're going to give you 25% off almost everything on the store. Go to heydude.com.
I'm literally buying a pair right now.
Billy's getting a pair right now.
The Wally Patriotics.
Billy, use promo code
Oh my god.
Dude25.
Dude,
I just saved you 25% off your order
amazing.
at heydude.com. 25% off the world's first purchase using the ad read while it was being read on a podcast.
Yeah.
Valid from 6/11 to 6/24. That's 6/11 through 6/24. That means right now. The code's active right now. 25% off. Use promo code DUDE Dude25. Dude25 at heydude.com.
I just got American flag and camo ones.
Nice. And now here's Glasses Malone.
I appreciate you coming on, bro. We've known each other for a minute, man. And we're doing an episode today on a history of LA gangs. Okay. And it's a fascinating history. It's a rich history. Has a lot to do with civil rights and everything involved with Black folks in this country. And I wanted to get your perspective on it in general, because you're one of the most, intellectual gang members I'd have never came across. Sure. I don't know a lot of these cats. Grew up with a lot of these cats. I definitely got respect for your mental, man. But if you could just give a little background, like where you from, like what you do and who you are.
Man, Glasses Malone. Pretty much just like a East Side survivor from the east side of the 110 freeway. Primarily Watson, Compton my whole life. My mom owned the house in Compton. My dad owned the house in Watson. That pretty much made my experience what it is.
And so as I'm digging into like the history of LA gangs, man, you cool with saying where you from?
Yeah, I'm from 117th Street, Watts Crip. Like,
right.
AKA 7th Street, Watts Crip.
All right, from the perspective of like somebody who was active, right? Somebody who was, an active gang member out there. Like, what do you view like the history of the gangs in LA and to what it has like evolved into? More so like I guess it's two different perspectives. The history and what it evolved into and like the height of it, like in the 90s, and then what it's evolved into now and like what is the state of things today?
I think when in its earliest inceptions, right? If you go back to the late 60s or early 70s, it was a bunch of kids just kind of, trying to make a movement inspired by obviously the Panthers and different ideas, but it was a bunch of kids trying to make a movement, you know what I'm saying, and putting it together, and it took kind of the people who society turned their back on and gave them something to believe in. Like most human beings, I realize, want to believe in something. We were just talking about this yesterday. So most human beings want to believe in something. So I think it gave them something to believe in, other kids around that age, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Probably in the height of it, it was more like family and friend based, like true gangbanging was about the people you grew up with. Y'all trying to not just survive at some place, trying to thrive, so however you went about earning economics, whether you was stealing, robbing banks, hustling, selling drugs, whatever, trying to thrive in the circumstances that wasn't really meant to thrive in. But it was all rooted in friends and families. Like if you go to the earliest beefs, of these gangs, it's usually somebody's family member that got killed, and that's what's propelling all of the, activity after that. That devastation of losing somebody close to you. Fast forward today, I just think more now it's like a college fraternity where people kind of go from campus to campus, looking for somebody to accept them. Same thing that drove them initially, the desire to belong. But in the height of it, it was like, these are the people you really grew up with. My older homies raised me outside of my mother and my father. Like they raised me. The younger ones, I raised them. You know what I'm saying? They was really my guys. They were friends. I know their mother, fathers, brothers, sisters, all their traumas, their issues. I know all of that. So my care for them, that's what drove the passion to do anything wrong. In their name, it was a passion for that person because we were friends. Today, it's a little different. It's really, it becomes the moniker itself, the name of the street or the name of the gang. And people walk in, think culturally, hating another person or hating somebody that belongs to a different group is actually what it's about, when that's not what it's about.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious to know, Glasses, and I'm PFT. Thank you for coming on the show. I'm excited to talk to you. I'm curious to know, because from our perspective and maybe a lot of our listeners' perspectives, gang culture is closely associated with drug culture, with the war on drugs, the crack epidemic that happened after that. And that's how a lot of the gangs make their money. That's, to a certain extent why a lot of them, get elevated. But before that happened, when gangs were starting, especially in LA, what was the business that gangs were in? Or was it mostly just like neighborhood protection for each other? Or was there like any sort of a business structure to it at its very beginning?
Well, it was definitely an oppressed sport initially. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't a ton of opportunities. I mean, if there were great jobs around, most people probably wouldn't be gangbanging. You know what I mean? If it was like warehouse opportunities like it was, you know, my father was growing up, most people wouldn't be doing the same thing. So it was very much a nothing else to do type of situation, not future looking bleak type of situation. So you kind of join the closest things with your partners. Yeah, when I think so, if I understand correctly, because this is my older homies' era, like when drugs came, that became the first way they all could, like multiple people in our community could thrive. Like, and it was right there. The opportunity finally presented itself and people jumped on it. That was all over the country when it came to, you know, poverty. But I think more or less it's you know, some people work, some people probably stole coats or stole shit, you know what I mean? People figured it out the best way they know how. I know they didn't want to be broke. I mean, if you look at what Tookie went to prison for robberies, you know what I mean? Minus the heinous end of the crime, which, you know, is super debated, but it was really robbing people for money.
I think that's a good like a historical perspective, like from, especially what I'd love to hear from you, man. Like Tookie Williams, I don't know if everybody on the podcast knows who he is or ran across it, whatever, researching this topic, but Tookie Williams is like a notable figure amongst, you know, Raymond Washington and all the originators of the original Crips in LA. So from your perspective, how would you view like Tookie's legacy and who and what he was and guys like him?
So right there's the shallow way we see it, the shallow way I see it, you know what I mean, which is these kind of mythical figures where they super buff, you know, strong, like they worked their body out. They may didn't have a ton of money and they grew up in hard situations, poor, you know. Tookie born at 53, you know, but he made his body look the part, like he was going to demand respect no matter his circumstance. And I think that's the main thing that I take from him. And then personally, I take from him, you know, when he finally gained consciousness and a lot of his situations too, which is crazy because it's different today. Even what he went to prison for, it was 3 or 4 people, you know, in these robberies that turned into murders, but they were all on PCP too. You know, most of these people are doing drugs. I mean, they dealing with life's trauma the way they dealing with life's trauma. You know what I mean? Especially coming through that 60s, which was like a drug-induced era. Like a lot of people was on drugs, you know, hippie era. A lot of people was on drugs in the 60s and 70s. So I think they dealt with it the best way they knew how, and whatever was closest to them, they grabbed onto it, you know, friends, family, whatever, and so much. So for Tookie with me, it's like I look at him like somebody who decided like he was going to get respect from everybody, no matter what, no matter his circumstances. When he went through his trials and tribulations, you know what I'm saying, he still figured out a way to make something out of life of it. I think that's how I look at Crippin' as a whole, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be a criminal. Well, you definitely got to be down to thug to be a Crip, but you don't have to take the route that everybody's saying you have to take. Like, it's up to you. It's like, long as you stand up and be willing to do whatever it takes to get justice, you know, that's what it's really all about, you know, to make sure you thrive.
To me, growing up, man, around a lot of these cats, that's what struck me more so than anything. And I felt, and I want to get your take on it as well, is like the social currency that comes along with being like somebody you don't want to fuck with. You know what I'm saying? That social currency in those areas like reigns supreme. And I feel like as you grow, like, so like when we was younger and you hear about, you know, Tookie Williams or who are all the OGs or whatever the case may be,
sure,
like there's a certain amount of reverence that you have for them. You know what I'm saying? Or somebody who put in a lot of work across whatever the way, like there's a lot of reverence that you have. But as you grow, you realize you was just participating in a lot of nonsense. But I want to get your take like on that social and being in that environment and that social currency that comes with you know, the violence in our communities, but how negatively from an outside perspective, it's like you causing a lot of ruckus, but internally how when you're in that environment, it can be looked at as reverence.
So that's a dope take, right? Because it does come across at times like nonsense. And there are some homies that do have nonsense. But I think like the American way of thought, you know what I'm saying? Like the American, like, so there's a cornerstone in masculinity, right? That I don't want to be fucked with, that's the wrong person to fuck with. That's all men. That's if you work at a business and a corporation and your employees fucking up, you want to be that boss to be like, you don't play with me because you get your ass fired. So, it trickles down even into the poorest and most oppressed places. You know what I mean? And it may be a little bit more primitive, so it's physically, explained, but it's all the same. I think culturally in America, even when I remember back being a kid, watching Ronald Reagan on TV talking about the dictators in Libya and making this whole rhetoric of America is not to be fucked with. Of course, that mentality passed through the most, the poorest and most oppressed places. You may didn't have bombs, but you might have had hands. You might have had fists. That was the mentality of America pretty much my whole existence. And then even when I read throughout history, that's been America's whole stance. So of course it trickles down to every American. It's going to trickle down to the worst circumstances. Whatever I got, my pride, American pride is some shit. You know what I'm saying? It's one of the craziest things that make us unique as a country. We have a different sense of pride about how we carry ourselves, and it goes down to the lowest places, in America. You know what I mean? So fast forward, 2001, 9/11, you know what I mean? And somebody bomb, these buildings, and they fly planes into these buildings, right? And they fly planes into these buildings. America didn't say, hey, we're going to have a conference. We're going to sit down. We're going to come up with an amicable solution of, how we're going to express ourselves without violence. No, it was on. Drones. Bob, not kill, die. All the way to the point to where 20 years later, you have a sitting president now that's on TV bragging about knocking something down, killing somebody that did something to him 20 years ago. So we be crazy to not look at it like this mentality doesn't pass even from the wealthiest and most powerful positions to the poorest and most oppressed positions. It's all the same mentality.
There's no picture of George W. Bush and Osama bin Laden holding the American flag and the Taliban flag tied together and being like, unity. We're squashing this.
You feel what I'm saying? If that's the goal, that's why I think it's weird to me, because I don't quite understand how people, look at it so crazy. Like, we live in this country. And back to your point that you were saying, to like the soldier's mentality. You know what I mean? Like, we all have that soldier's mentality, especially that generation of people. They have a soldier's mentality. It's serious. You know what I mean? You protecting, you willing to die and kill for whatever, because that's how my older homies were brought up. They were brought up, their parents are Vietnam vets. Their parents been in wars. So they passed that mentality. And these little dudes ain't going to war. My older homies ain't going to war for America, but guess what? They going to war for 117th Street because, Lil Jackie was around the corner and they done jumped on Lil Jackie and shot him in the leg because they was all drunk.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So that's why I wanted to get you on here, because you get it, and you're just one of the smartest dudes I came across. And so
I appreciate that.
When you're talking about, I read this book, and I always bring it up in these conversations because for a lot of especially white Americans, right? A lot of white Americans can't fathom the fact that you'll say the cats in our neighborhoods are fighting a very similar war that our soldiers are fighting across seas. It's about land, it's about territory, it's about respect. And those kind of things in the macro are viewed as brave, valiant, but in the micro, it's criminal. When the same crimes that are being committed in our neighborhoods are also being committed overseas. Until we reconcile with that fact and have a little bit more empathy, it's going to continue, to happen and transpire in the way that it does. You brought up a very important point, was what you said of the soldier's mentality. And when you look at a lot of those, like the Panthers and the US organization in LA when it first started, a lot of them cats came from Vietnam War. They came from the actual war and came and organized in a way that said we must protect ourselves. And that's the funny thing, is America taught
them how to do
it. They taught them how to protect and train. And that's it's literally why the gun laws in California are so strict right now, was because Bobby Seale and the Black Panthers in Oakland they said, okay, we're gonna arm ourselves. We understand our rights. We understand, and they stood on the steps.
It was like, they get
Yep.
out of control.
In the next month, legislation was passed saying guns. Hey, we gotta get away with these guns. So it's beautiful to see you articulate it in a way that I've always seen it. Like Cornel West, he just put in a bid for running for president. I don't know how I feel about it yet, but
Sure.
I think it's a beautiful human. He had a book in 1992 called Race Matters, and he talks about all of this stuff. And this was in 1992, and he said the gangbanger South Central LA speaks the exact same language as George Bush. And he said this in 1992, right?
I never read that. I got
it's one of my favorite books.
Yeah.
But as gang life has evolved, I also want to get your take on this, because very uniquely, I have seen it, other than maybe some Afrobeat stuff, currently, like from Africa. Black American life has been monetized, whether the good or the bad aspects of it. They have found ways to let it bleed into pop culture. Mm-hmm. And so it has been so monetized across the spectrum. And so gang life in South Central LA spread across the country like wildfire. Partly do I know a lot of cats who had a bunch of homies like move, you know what I'm saying, and set up shop in other places. Yeah. But for the most part, I think it was the idea. And I want to get your take on what is so fascinating about the Crips and the Bloods, because they are global organizations now, not necessarily in unistep. Yeah, it's not unistep, but the idea of what it was so sexy to people that said we want to have that. And so something that you were involved in from the very early age of your life, that is very unique to your community, has now been globalized and almost watered down. Like, I want to get your take on that.
So this is where mainstream America could take responsibility, right? Because at one time it only could travel, right? It only could travel because somebody was going to another community to monetize it. Somebody taking drugs to Washington, Tacoma, to monetize what's going on in Tacoma, the people there. It's like, okay, we're going to sell some dope right here. And, hey, you guys need to get together and create your own organization to either get down in the program or to stand up against the program. That's the only way gangs would move initially. There was no other way for it to move. But America kind of got into this thing to where they wanted to serve up urban culture, right? So they made films, Colors, which is a police film that loosely gives people an understanding about gangbanging, very loose, because the whole film is rooted about the relationship between the older and the younger police officer. Mm-hmm. But if you show somebody the highlights, like Sports Center, of a culture, highlights, that shit look like crazy. You know what I mean? If you don't explain to somebody the thick and thin of it, and you say, this is what it is, and you simplify it that pure, and you make it look that powerful, oh yeah, people want to get down. Fast forward, you go to Boys in the Hood. That's a movie about black fathers. You know what I'm saying? Kids without a father, kids with a father. The whole movie is about Trey being raised by his dad, not his mom, and how it changed his life. Yeah. But if you give them the highlights of Doughboy, you give them the highlights of Ferris, and you see that, that's a very attractive thing for a young mind. You know what I'm saying? It's very powerful to see it, to see culture so packaged. You show them Snoop Dogg, you know what I mean? And it's like, it becomes contagious. You know what I mean? It's spread it like wildfire. So Hollywood did a really great job of giving people the highlights of something that's really, really deep.
That's interesting.
And making it surface.
It's like watching baseball highlights on SportsCenter. You're like, oh, this game's awesome. There's so much action in it. And then you go out to the park one day and you're like, wait, I gotta wait 30 seconds in between pitches, one home run a game.
Strikeout.
Yeah. No, that's interesting.
I have a dual mind about that too, though, right? So like, there's a duality in that where I'm like, I do get that, the exploitation that really started in the 70s with shit like Superfly and shit like that, right? And so I get the exploitation, what we would call the black exploitation of a lot of our cultural practices and norms. But in one sense, well, like I said, it's an exploitation because at the top, the most of the palms is getting greased are not of our community, right?
Sure.
But then you'll have a Snoop, you'll have a Cube, whatever the case might be, who's like they transcend that and they tell their stories, right? Because the stories was gonna get told either way. I would rather have it by cats who was in it than not. And so it also gave a lot of opportunity for cats around it. But again, it also
sure is I get what you're saying. But I've said this to Snoop before, and I said this to people around him. I'm like, Hollywood prepared the world to hear Snoop Dogg. Snoop excelled at the role. You know what I mean? Snoop excelled at the opportunity. Like he became the most, coolest, like that's Crip in a nutshell. Like this really cool, smooth dude that's gonna party all the time, that ain't taking no shit. And you finally heard it. You know what I mean? So Hollywood prepared the world to finally hear the voice of, this American culture that's super contagious. And then Snoop came and fulfilled prophecy like Jesus, you know what I mean? God and Jesus, like Ice-T set the foundation, right? Like God of gangster rap. And Ice Cube is the Moses of gangster rap. He came and walked the trail and showed you it was possible to walk it. And Snoop came and just fulfilled, the prophecies of it all. Like this is really it in all its glory. Same thing, drug dealing in those films and Time Magazine did with Nicky Barnes and all of these people, they did for Jay-Z. They set the stage for black drug dealing, you know what I mean? A black drug dealer to come voice exactly the complete experience. So, I mean, like we just were saying with baseball, if you look at the highlights of it all and you're like, oh, these highlights determine how good this game was. The score could have been 7-5, but it could have been in 2 innings.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
it's
if
like
you
watching the Angels and you're like, oh, this is the best team ever because they have Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani on the squad. And then you're like, oh wait, they haven't won shit in 30 years.
Exactly. So I think that's the thing. So again, everybody likes salt in their food until it's time to deal with high blood pressure. I mean, everybody wants some seasoning. Yeah. Seasoning is dope in moderation, but some people really got bad meat, so they have to over season the fucking food. So, hence you have these issues. In America, we look at it now, we complaining about high blood pressure, but it was cool when you had that table salt on the table. And remember, some people got to season bad food.
Yeah,
I mean, all these greens ain't flavorful like romaine lettuce. Greens is bullshit. You got to add a lot of fucking salt and vinegar and shit to make this shit digestible.
That's a great point.
You know what I'm saying? That's how it is when you're looking at these films. Like to some people, we looking at these films and it's like, oh, that's interesting. That's what they have going down there. That's crazy. And then you have some people be like, oh, this is how they dealing with, their circumstances. Oh, I'm on this. I'm with whatever they with.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious to know because you talked earlier about, if somebody is trying to figure out, sometimes they don't know what gang or what set they want to be a part of. Culturally, as a complete outsider, this might be a dumb question. Are there cultural differences between the Crips and the Bloods as you see it in Southern California in terms of like what they represent, what they're all about, what their values might be? Is there something intangible like that, or is it all rooted in those original beefs that have then grown and grown and grown over the years?
So this is tough, right? Because there's an issue in that question. So gang culture is not about beefing. That's just humanity. Human beings are going to find reasons to conflict. It's just what they do. Poorest, wealthiest, don't matter. You think all these countries with billions of dollars, they find amicable solutions. Nope, they going to fight. That's what we going to do. You look at Russia and Ukraine, they going to fight. Some of the brightest minds in the world, and they just can fight. That's all they going to do. So that's a human being issue. So cultural, do I think there's a difference between Crips and Bloods today? Hell no. They the exact same thing. In its inception, Crips were a bunch of ambitious people that would go around community to community trying to get people to be down with their movement. And the guys who had existing situations that stood up to them and said, no, we're not going to do that. We going to be who we are, became known as Bloods. So I think in its inception, yes, there was a cultural difference. It was kind of like the guys trying to bully somebody and the guys standing up to the bullies to a degree. I guess you could kind of frame it that way loosely. Mm-hmm. Is there any difference within it? No, it's the same shit. They all wear the same clothes. The colors is just different. They all pretty much use the same lingo, except some change different letters in the front of letters. It's all the same thing because it's all rooted in the same type of poverty, same type of oppression, and the way you deal with conflict resolution. So, but I think what you said, that's weird. I don't know how that works because I couldn't kill for a stranger because we from the same community. You know what I mean? Like that really wouldn't. Like, what would be my bond with that person to emotionally move me? I have to build with this person and develop a relationship. So if some stranger comes around that I don't know his mother and father and I don't know him, he got shot, I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know where that shit is, how they do that. Again, that's that desperation in humans to belong. So, you want to show that you down. I mean, that's a whole different level of what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is, where I'm from, all my homeboys is my friends. Like I really know their parents. I know I know their children. I know their grandparents in a lot of the cases. Like we know each other. So it's one thing when you got to come back and tell somebody, mom or dad, that they got killed and y'all was together. And then you don't know what that does to your mind and how you feel about it and how you feel like you want to go about getting justice at that point.
Mm-hmm. Billy, you had a question?
Talking about the Crip movement that you were mentioning earlier, what exactly did that entail? And what was sort of the ideology they were spreading, if anything?
Man, them little dudes was 16. You know what I'm saying? So it's not going to be clear. But I think from reading it and talking to my older homies and talking to the older guys that's even before that, because the Crip it's not really one organization, right? Bloods are not one organization. These are like, different battalions in military services. Like some gangs are like the Navy, some gangs are like the Marines. So in theory, they're all military, but they literally all are their own unique entity. And they find a likeness in the job that they have to do, like the military. Like a Navy person and a Marine person could be in the same place. And they, culturally, the motherfuckers might fight, especially the Army and Marines, they fight and shit. So, same with like an Angels fan and a Dodgers fan. Like it only matters when it comes to your love for baseball. You know what I'm saying? Right. Outside of that, there's going to be conflict because the ideologies is going to be different. You know what I mean? They could be the same, but they're going to be different. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of tough to, when them dudes started, they was 16 years old. You know what I mean? And I don't know what great things 16-year-old human beings have done historically that are like fully detailed. You know what I'm saying? Like I think it'd be just like a simple idea and then it just get loose.
Yeah.
But it's tough.
Just like wondering what would be an example of what they'd say to someone to join. We're a great group of guys, like we're bonded.
They have some cold vibes, bro.
Yeah, I want to hear some slogans.
Explain like it's a fraternity to Billy, and Billy's rushing.
For sure, they wanted to turn it into a machine. So their thing would be like the machine is in motion. Do you want to be a part of the machine? It's very much like military mind. Right. Like Uncle Sam wants you. It's not deep. Just like joining the military didn't have at first, their initial slug was like, Uncle Sam wants you. That little man pointing at you, we want you. Yeah. That's cripping. We want you. You want to be with us? This is where it's at. And then along the line, they start selling, we'll pay you monthly. But it started off as, we want you. You want to get into this little funk with us? You want to go here and handle this business? That was the selling point for me in at one time. And then it started being like, there was a pride about it, representing, your community. And then it became opportunities to earn, as drugs came in the 80s. Hey, we making money over here. You want to make money with us? You might have to get down. You might have to protect the community. One of the greatest criticism I laugh at when people talk to me about gangs is when they say, oh, man, you don't even own no property in your hood and you dying for it. Most American soldiers don't own property. They don't just give you a house because you fought in the military. Like, hey, you sign up, you have a house now. No, you don't. Motherfuckers be homeless. You know what I mean? So it's the same. Think of it like the American military. Like, you know what I mean? It's the same mind state from back then to now. You know what I mean? It's the same mind state. It's the same recruiting methods. It's not really, they beat your ass up to see if you tough. We're gonna put you through 6 weeks of boot camp. We're gonna kick your ass. You know, you heard stories of the hazing that be going on and shit. My little brother's a Marine. He got hazed and shit. Motherfuckers ain't playing. So they want to toughen you up. It's all masculinity. You know, it's all masculinity.
And then a follow-up question. When you're talking about different streets and different neighborhoods, what were the numbers looking like? Just from, like, were there 100 members of you know, a brigade, as you're saying, or like was it smaller, like 20? I'm just trying to get an idea.
So yeah, it's weird, right? Because this is what makes it crazy. So on my side of town on the 110 freeway, there's a lot more gangs in LA. There's a ton of gangs. I'm from a small neighborhood, right? 117th Street might be 100, 150 people. It's not a lot of people. The gangs to the left of us, right, or to the south of us is the Mona Parks. The Mona Parks might got 400 or 500 people. The gang to the right of us is the PJ Crips, the Imperial Court, PJ Watts Crips. They might have 500 members. You know, you go to a hood that's right next to them, Nut Hood, they might have 100 or 80 members. The 10 lines, you know, which is on 110th Street in Wilmington, they might have 200 members. You know, you get down to the Grape Streets, they might have 1,000 members. So it's just different. You know, it depends. You cross on the west side and these territories are huge. They could have, you know, 60s might have 1,200 people. A-Trades might have 900 or 1,400 people. So it all depends. No, China has more people in its military because they have more territory. You know what I mean? They have more people in their military because they have a ton of territory, you know what I mean, that people live on. They have a ton of people. So it depends on how big the community or the borders of the community is itself, because then you grow up in the culture that's being where that community or whatever that community is.
Do you look at gang culture right now as having positive effects, or has it reached a point? It sounded like you were saying earlier, like, you know, there's a lot of nonsense that's going on right now, and they don't necessarily stand for anything. Do you think that there's positive aspects of gang culture?
So, and this is one of the hardest questions, right? Because I've been told that people think I speak positive about gangs, and it's like, I just speak the reality of it. So gangs work for me great. They shaped me into a man I wouldn't trade it in for anything. Taught me I could defend myself, be on my own. I don't need nobody's help. I'm going to be all right. Some people, if you give them power, it fucks their head up. You know, they be messed up. They be totally distraught. You know what I mean? They don't know how to deal with such responsibility. So it's not necessarily something that becomes positive. It's like family. Is having a family positive or negative? I guess it depends on your family. Like if your family, you know, shit on you all the time, it's probably gonna be fucked up, and you're gonna come out into the real world and be horrible. You know, but my homies were super, forgive me for sounding like this, super nurturing to who I was. You know, they did challenge me, and I had to stand on whatever I was and had to validate it through information or even at times physical presence to let people know that I could do whatever we have to do. But I think it's hard to give human beings that kind of power. You know, especially somebody who, I'm into drag racing, big drag racing guy. I've been drag racing since I was 5 years old. Like, I'm huge drag racing. When I was 10, like having 600 horsepower was crazy. Like you had to earn it. You know, you had to have $3,000 cylinder heads. You had to have like a great camshaft technology. You know, you had to have stern enough parts to deal with it. It was just a lot to earn. You know what I'm saying? Fast forward, everybody has you could finance a fucking Hellcat. You could finance 900 horsepower. So it's like more motherfuckers wreck the car. It's probably more wrecks in California happening than ever before because didn't nobody earn 900 to 1,000 horsepower. So they horrible with it. They mistreat it. They don't know how to deal with the power. They don't get shit. They are horrible, and there's no way you should be able to finance 900 horsepower. That's the thing about how I came up and how gangbanging really is. You had to earn power. You had to earn respect. and it taught you how to be a man so you didn't mistreat it. Today, people are getting the power of all the shit that motherfuckers did without earning it. So guess what? They misusing the power. They have no idea how to use it correctly, appropriately. Most of my older homies got jobs and careers. They take care of their families. They still very much, my homeboy Mad Dog been driving trucks for 25 years. Right now, if you ask him, he gonna tell you from 7th Street Watts. My older homie Pluck been driving trucks for 15 years. If you ask him right now, he gonna tell you he from 117th Street Watts Crip. My older homie Shady's been fixing motorcycles for 10 years. They gonna tell you they from the community. This is not a question. So it's tough because human beings are not, if you don't make them earn power or respect, most likely they'll misuse it. So gangbanging could have most times it does have a horrible adverse, effect on people.
Yeah, I don't think that you're like giving an endorsement to gang culture. I wasn't coming at it from that perspective of you saying that it was positive. I actually just hear you being, saying this is the reality of the situation, and here's how other people might not understand it if they don't grow up around it. You are an acclaimed hip hop producer as well. I have to imagine that in your work, you've worked with Bloods as a Crip.
My whole career, my career, my first start was from the Game and Big Face 100 and G Ride and all the Cedar Blocks.
I didn't even know that.
My first record deal was with Mac 10 and Lil Wayne and Birdman. But when you start to earn economics, once you decide to pursue that, you're going to have to do business with whoever in Los Angeles. That's just, you can't just get Crip dollars.
I want to get your take on this, man, because gangs on the West Coast was always different to me than gangs everywhere else, for the simple fact that there was structure that I would believe like handed down from the history of it. So there was a lot of order involved in it. So like when I looked at I got really into like these documentaries about King Von and like all this drill rap music, right?
Yeah.
I want to get your take on this because what struck me as odd as King Von, because the majority of cats that from all the neighborhoods in LA, cats would get on and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but for what I saw, from the most part, they would put the hood politics away and try to do a little better. Like King Von and those Chicago cats was like a different breed of gangs where it was like it wasn't never really about what y'all was brought up on, and they brought the hood politics to the mainstream, which I feel like is a little different. Do you feel like I'm reading that situation incorrectly, or was you?
No, that's fair. That's fair. But remember, one of the greatest, you would call him a journalist. They didn't bring it along. One of the greatest personalities in the fold of music today brought it along, right? Which is academics. Like the rappers, we wouldn't like. Rest assured, West Coast gang members had issues. South, street guys had issues. Everybody had issues still, and they still had them in the music industry. You just didn't have a personality who covers news and media reporting on it along the way. Like the reason I know people from Chicago and I knew about some of the wars, but I wasn't as vested as I was as when academics popped on the scene on YouTube and started detailing the wars. You know what I mean? Daily, every day, multiple efforts a day. And I thought it was like brilliant to watch him report on what's going on the street. Like, like Barbara Walters, cause like it was crazy.
I can't stand this nigga though, man.
But I get it, okay. Because it is somebody who's not necessarily from the streets. He's not from it, but that's what made the Chicago situation unique. You never saw that before.
But also worse. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
like,
no
you
question.
You remember in the 90s when that hoopla over the media was about the leather jacket and it was like all that leather. That's the same shit that academics did.
Yeah, except way more detail.
Agreed. And it's
like
because
I feel like I know
far more reach than it did
I
back
know
in the 90s.
so much about Chicago culture and violence and shit. And I'm calling back to my partners up there, like, and they like, damn, G, how you know about this? I'm like, man, I was looking at this little nigga on YouTube and he was talking about the whole situation.
That's crazy.
And so I don't think it's a knock to them, because I do think they get a lot of stick for something that's not their fault. You know, a lot of people think their music is about murder and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no.
A knock to who? You don't think it's a knock to who?
The brothers from Chicago.
Oh, okay.
All of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Not Ack is fucking crazy. Like I'm surprised that they ain't tripped with him.
He just jet fuel.
Yeah, but I'm surprised they ain't tripped with the fact that they still endorse him. That's why I don't have nothing to say.
It's because bro, they like this nigga because he helped, like, he has a big following, and it's like Vlad. That's why niggas keep going on Vlad. Any press is good press. If I'm in the mix, if I'm in the conversation, I could use that to sell whatever I'm selling.
Yeah, but in certain place, and this, I guess, being a real Crip, like, that shit just wouldn't matter. Like, if you did something across me, like if Vlad Act did something across me, I don't give a fuck about they press. I'm gonna slaughter them.
Quick question.
Like, it ain't worth it. Just sheerly off of respect of what it represents. But they endorse him, so I really kind of stay out of the thought of it all. You know what I mean? Especially Vlad. I know Vlad for real in real life.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Like, I'll tell you some crazy stories about this crazy motherfucker. But it's like a lot of people hear their music and give them stick. You know what I mean? They're just soldiers in a war. So whether or not you understand why they're fighting, you know, that's your problem. But very much, this is a real war that's going on where people are dying. Their friends, people they grew up with, are dying. And again, they're kids.
Right.
And they doing pills and they doing drugs.
Yeah.
So they not sober kids.
Yeah. That
for some reason, a bunch of poor people got access to some of the greatest guns that I only bought as an adult. I had to get some money to buy some of the shit that they got at 15. Yeah. These motherfuckers got AKs at 15. How the fuck can you get an AK at 14 or 15? And they have them in groves. Like, I was looking at that drill movement first starting on YouTube and looking at Lil JoJo video and Reese video and Chief. And these motherfuckers got guns that I just bought at that time in my life because they were that expensive.
Yeah.
These motherfuckers don't got no money. They got shoestrings for belts. They don't have no money. They ain't no D-boys, but they got a fucking gun that costs $1,900. Mm-hmm. That's the real conversation. Cool. And didn't no older person give them that $2,000 gun? Because I'm going to tell you right now, as a motherfucking Crip, my older homies would not give me no motherfucking gun, let alone a gun that costs $1,900. And the Chicago OGs ain't no different. Mm-hmm. So we need to really start questioning, how did this huge influx of guns get to all of these poor peoples when they can't pay their motherfucking bills?
How do you think that happened?
So there's a whole story about a train breaking right in the community, and somebody went and stole them all. People went and stole them all, but they said the train breaking was not a coincidence.
Yeah.
So I don't quite know. It's a bunch of theories, but trust me, you got to be scared when somebody 12 or 13, got a Uzi.
Yeah.
Nobody 12 or 13 had no fucking Uzi. Uzi expensive. I just got a Uzi probably like 4 years ago. Uzis ain't cheap, man. You know what I mean? Like, no. These motherfuckers don't got cars, but they got AKs. AKs a $1,000 fucking gun on the street.
Billy, what were you gonna say?
Asking about this academics guy, for context, is this a YouTuber named Academics?
Yes.
For a second, I thought you were talking about like academia, like someone from like there's professors studying this.
DJ Academics is, for the long story short, DJ Academics he's a vlogger who made his bones. Really, he started detailing the whole beginnings of the Chicago, the Chicago drill scene. He started like detailing that very day to day, like Glass said, and it expanded to YouTube and it blew up. And guys like I forget the documentary that you saw at PFT with the Trap Lore where they detail King Von, all the shit. So cats like that started catching on. And that's what's fascinating to me about what Glass touched on earlier, was American media has done such a good job of like Disneyfying. Like they Disneyfy that life, you know what I'm saying? It looks cool and all that shit. But like, so DJ Academics is reporting on dudes that are actually getting killed. And it's like, to me, he almost enjoyed it. Like I never got any kind of like, he might say it, but it's like, I don't know, man. I just felt very
rightfully so. Vic feel the same way. A lot of people I know feel the same way.
Right. But just to answer Billy's question, it's just like there's a bunch of those outlets like DJ Vlad, what we were just talking about. And for people that don't know, because a lot of our audience, I don't think will know that DJ Academics and DJ Vlad are people who kind of document a lot of
urban culture.
Yeah, and they package it in a way that looks very sexy, but they're, like I said, they're really all people.
Highlights, man. It'd be highlights of an experience.
And then if you're a kid, you're like, oh, I made it on DJ Academics page, and then that's like a feather in your cap, and you get the clout. So that drives people to do more and more crazy shit in order to get on and have your name be put out to a wider group of people. So it's like almost a snowball effect where it just keeps going and going and going.
Now, is law enforcement also watching DJ Academics?
Yes.
And how does that impact how they operate, and how is there still sort of, from what I picked up, you're saying there's a little bit of affinity for DJ Academics because they wanted to be known, but isn't there this sort of snitching culture that he may be like are guys getting arrested because they end up on DJ Academics? And if that's so, how do they keep supporting it?
So it's like okay, so Vlad or Academics couldn't be snitches because neither one of them are street guys. Like, that's the first thing. Like, snitching is reserved for criminals. Like, if you were like a civilian, like the news couldn't snitch. You know what I mean? Like, you can't go call what's the sister out here in LA? Super dope sister, love this lady to death. I can't think of her name. Dog like her. She couldn't be a snitch. Walter Cronkite couldn't be a snitch. Barbara Walters couldn't be a snitch. You know what I mean? So Oprah couldn't be a snitch. Like, they're not involved in the life. So them reporting on what's actually going on is different. So they couldn't be considered snitches because they're not like in the streets, right? They're just media. They're reporting on the news. To Arian's point, though, it's like they can have a parade, a feel of like they're cool with you, like they are like you. And that's kind of the deception part that opens up different people to kind of incriminate themselves on platforms. You know what I'm saying? So they like Tekashi, like where it's like, oh yeah, I'm one of y'all until it's time to go to jail, and then it's time for you to be accountable for what you did. It's like, no, I'm not one of y'all. It's different. It was them. You know what I mean? So it's a little disingenuousness could be said that's going on. You know what I'm saying? But the reason people keep going is because the natural human condition, right, is the most primitive and basic instinct is to gain care, to have something care about you, to matter, to matter. People want to matter. And these platforms have some of the greatest audiences, that have, that the urban audience have access to, that the urban creative or the urban figure has access to. Vlad could be the biggest thing somebody that grew up where I grew up at could ever be on. It ain't like Barbara Walters, ain't sitting down. That's not happening. You know what I'm saying? So you can't just go on Fox News. It ain't like it's Vlad or Fox News or Vlad and Fox TV. It's like Vlad. You know what I mean? So people keep going because it becomes their biggest outlet to let people hear their story or hear what they have to say, to matter.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it makes total sense. I mean, like, we're in the aggregation business occasionally on the internet, and like people are always like, "Oh, I made Barstool's Instagram." Yeah. Like what? So then you just it's kind of the same thing. You just keep pushing further and further, and you're like, "Oh, I'm on Vlad. I'm a celebrity now. Like, you guys saw me on Vlad. I'm featured on Vlad."
So do they tend to submit themselves? Like, hey, I just did this hit, and tell DJ Academics? Are they self-submitting? Sure, like
publicists, publicists could submit for an interview. Academics and Vlad keep, neither one of them are street, but they definitely can hear it. They definitely have connections to people with their ears to it. So if something is happening, they can reach out to somebody's publicist or to the actual product itself, the artist itself, and say, hey, man, I want to get you to sit down on my platform that has 10 million people following.
Yeah, I want to get Big T involved real quick. Big T, you have any questions? He's over on the couch. I don't know if you can see him from here, but
yeah, this is gonna strike you as a stupid question, but I don't know, and I feel like most people don't know, because when you see stuff about gangs on the news, it's over 99% negative. It's there was a shooting or there was whatever. what is a Tuesday in a gang look like? Are there meetings? Are there like what goes on that's not?
It's dope though. It's funny. It's not a dumb question.
I'm serious though.
Big T, I can't
the
see you.
lowlights.
Yeah, Big T, I can't see you, but there's no such thing as a dumb question when we ignorant to life, culture. So
I really like. What does it look like when it's not the stuff you see on the news?
What's a day in the life of the Tuesday of a Crip?
You know what's funny? It's the same day. This is the irony, and this is the thing that I hate about it. The same shit you doing. Motherfuckers sit around and watch sports. Somebody making some money. That's a regular Tuesday. Motherfuckers got 100 jokes. Motherfuckers lying about the girl that they slept with. You know what I mean? Maybe some. Honestly, and he could tell you, there's not a ton of days of violence. Again, it's the news is telling you this, so you're getting the highlight. Don't get me wrong. 30 days out of 365 days. That's to an American, that probably would be crazy if you grew up in the suburbs. But where we from, it's not as violent as you would imagine. It's not always some shit happening. You know what I mean? And for the most part, it's the same thing. It's a bunch of homies kicking it, chopping it up. Maybe some homies is earning. They out there getting their money. Maybe some homie went to work. People got jobs in gangs. Somebody went to school because they got school. It's all the same thing. It's regular life as usual until there's a confrontation.
Mm-hmm. Now, this may be another stupid question, but what is the setting of where this is all taking place?
You know what? It's not stupid. There's no such thing, man. Out just regular. It could be inside of a house. It could be inside of somebody's mom's house. She at work and they just in the living room chilling, smoking, talking, lying. For sure, most motherfuckers that talk longer than 10 minutes, somebody lying. Somebody lying. So they could be on the curb. Like a lot of times we've been on the curb.
Is there like a base? Is there like a base where this all takes place? Or is it okay?
I mean, forgive me, because some homies do got kicking in spots. Like, right, their kicking in spots is completely different. Like they might kick it over here. You know what I mean? This they little area. Like my generation, we grew up on Corrosive, so we would always sitting in the dead end on Corrosives and just be sitting up there talking shit, making some money, listening to somebody lie or lying about what's going on every day. So it's no different. Some homies got jobs, some homies go to school, some homies sit around all day and don't earn. They really just be there, just be poor and broke, even with the opportunity to earn money. Some people getting drunk, trying to deal with whatever they dealing with in life. So they drunk. Somebody might have smoked some PCP to deal with their problems, and you just function all together. So it depends. Everybody got different pockets in the community that they hang out. You know what I mean?
I can see Billy just rolling up to his friend's house and be like, "Oh, it's so nice outside. Can we have gang outdoors today? Can we just go hang out outside? I don't want to hang out inside at the moment."
Did y'all ever kick it when y'all was growing up? Y'all never just kicked it out in front of your house?
Of course.
No, we did.
Of course, yeah.
Same shit.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know from your perspective when it comes to athletes that claim gang relationships or gang ties, or they'll throw up like a sign on TV. Sometimes you see in the last few years it's happened more and more. Have there been athletes that do that have absolutely no gang connection whatsoever?
Hell yeah.
And they just like out of nowhere pretend because they think it makes them look cool? Hell
yeah, for sure.
And people know when they watch that.
But there are also some niggas that's from it.
That's the problem. Yeah.
True.
And it's like, that's not as crazy, because even having a bunch of money is not like the same as being a respected member of the community.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I don't know what it is. People crazy, but for real, like it's something about being a respected member of the community. So it's easy for me to tell one athlete, oh man, you ain't never been over here. But then maybe the athlete that got him feeling like he one of us, that happens in the community every day as well. It'd be some dude that he was hanging out with one of the other homeboys because one of the other homeboys is in jail for 6 months, and he was in jail with him for 6 months. He come home talking about he one of us because he was with Moto for 6 months. You know what I mean? So it's not really an organized thing. That's why I laugh when people want to charge gangs with RICO. It's not organized enough to even get that kind of respect.
Yeah. That's funny.
I was a lot of confusion.
I was reading your Wikipedia page a second ago.
Hold on, real quick.
Yeah,
that's actually a very important point, because a lot of gang history and issues in our communities are directly related to conflict with police. And the
Right.
origins of conflicts with police in South Central Los Angeles are racist. Just point blank period. There's no other way to describe it. And so those interactions over the years have grown, you know, to a culture where it's like I don't really like police officers. Like I'd have never like I'm sure that there's great cops out there, but like my interactions with them when I was younger, like they were assholes, and this is how I view them. And so it's like I mean, like I'm not gonna go walk by a police officer now and say fuck the police. I'm just I'm a millionaire, like you know what I'm saying. But like I understand, like if I didn't have what I had, like that we would otherize them just like they would otherize us.
And it's crazy for me. They're just like the competitive. Like I'm like a cowboy. You know what I mean? And they're just like my competitive. They like competition trying to stop me from earning. I don't have to hate towards them. They drive me to be better. I'm just honestly, I swear to God, that's really the truth.
You do a jersey swap with a cop.
I understand. I've never heard.
Like I look at everybody like a tool. You know what I mean? So shit, some of them, you know, we can do some business, you know. But
right by say, you know, you make me a better dealer.
I grew up in the time, man, when I was really doing my thing, and everybody could testify that knows me, or you could call people and ask them. You could call some of these police. I just had that edge about it, man. I really looked at it like, you know, we are in competition. I am trying to earn. You are trying to stop me. Like I'm coming out the backfield. You the line. I'm running right through it. There's no personal feelings. I'm not ever going to I don't have lyrics saying fuck. I don't have nothing. You literally are just going to get ran over if possible.
That's hilarious, bro.
That's just for me, though.
Yeah, I like that. So yeah, go ahead, Arian.
Well, I was going to rap in a sense because it's like you are much more than just a gang member, and I wanted you to come on here because you're one of the most articulate ones I've ever come across. That understands the history in a very broad and in a very broad and nuanced context. And so, 2-part question, man. One, do you see there ever being solutions? Because I know there was we get into it in our episode when we talk about this, but like there was a peace treaty in the early 90s that was curtailed in part due to police propaganda, but any kind of peace treaties amongst like I don't know nationwide, but it's South Central Los Angeles because that's your stomping grounds. You see any kind of kind of peace going on in the future? Is there any kind of optimism in that? And the second part of the question is like, you know, like what else do you want to be? You don't want to be known as a gang, or maybe you do, I don't know. But like, what else do you want to be known for? Because there's a lot more to you. And from the outside looking in, I get if somebody say they from somewhere, how there's a sense of pride and respect that comes with it from my standpoint. But for somebody who don't know you, that's never been around gangs, like you're owning that shit. So like, I want to get your like response to those two things.
It's crazy because I wanted to hear about that Wikipedia thing, so don't forget that.
Yeah.
I got it.
Okay. So the first question, the first part is, it's always been earning opportunities that have brought peace. If you want to tame, a savage beast, give him comforts. I mean, the most savage motherfucker with comforts is you'll just take the gut right out of him. So right now people are being, with gentrification, they being priced out of hoods. You know what I mean? But can they take that mind state somewhere else if it's poor and no opportunities? Possibly. So I think long as there's poverty and any decent level of oppression, you're going to always have what we do. You're going to always have people banding together to try to figure out how to thrive in this life that's not suited for them to thrive in. Two, what do I want to be known for? I don't know. I just, it's not, because, I've never sat back and looked at my legacy in that way, right? Like I definitely looked at my musical legacy. I'm like, okay, I know how I want my music and my story to be told musically. As far as the brand myself, I just want to help provide information. Like that's the goal, you know what I mean? To translate this street urban culture so that my culture doesn't go ignored. You know what I mean? The problems don't go ignored. I want them two brothers up there sitting up there listening like this shit ain't that much different than my life. The only difference is, what we willing to do. Like, and I don't even think it's no different there. So my goal is to make sure that my community doesn't go ignored. You know what I mean? And doesn't just get frowned upon for something that's as American as apple pie. You know what I mean? Like I that's pretty much the only thing that I consistently try to do with my life. So musically, the films that I'm making, the TV shows, the content I'm making is to translate the street urban culture that we all come up into people who don't know what it's like, that are confused, that are ignorant. Like, it was a couple times that don't know, you know what I mean? Like they're ignorant, they don't have any idea. So that's what I do, you know what I mean? So if I'm known for it, it's different. You know what I mean? I think that's something you earn, just like being in the community. You earn the privilege of somebody being like, yo, he's able to translate what's going on where he's from to where we at.
I think
so then maybe there's something that people can help with.
It's a pretty cool thing to be known for too. Like it's something bigger than yourself that you'd rather be known for. That's admirable, I think. So I want to touch on this. On your Wikipedia page, it does mention that you were invited to participate in the Juggalo March on Washington in 2016, 2017 with Insane Clown Posse, who was labeled a gang by the FBI. The Juggalos
are a gang,
yeah, they're a gang. So
real gang.
Yeah, my question was just going to be like, do you fuck with the Juggalos, and can you explain from your perspective what you think about Insane Clown Posse?
Same exact thing, fans? Man. Juggalos ain't nothing but our cripper. That's our gangbanging brothers. It's the people that the world didn't want, that they didn't take in. And they band together and they made something. They decided to thrive and excel. And, ICP provides a soundtrack to that. Tech Nine provides a soundtrack to that. So many different people provide the soundtrack to the reject, the people that America doesn't want. So I've been fucking with Juggalos for 13 years. Like, ever. Like, since when I first got introduced to it, I was like, oh yeah, these my people. Like, we the same, you know what I mean? We the same. Mm-hmm. Hey. So it was always good. And it's crazy. It's dope because, Juggalos do come in all kind of races, colors, size, whatever, blah, 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 genders. But it is dope to see white people that's going through the same struggle of oppression and poverty and to see how they deal with it. And y'all motherfuckers ain't that different. That was like one of the greatest gifts I ever got from being exposed to ICP, being on tour with Tech Nine, is that.
Yeah.
Seeing white people in the same circumstances, like, oh yeah, this shit is the same. You know what I mean? Motherfuckers is the same.
It's a beautiful thing.
It's awesome.
It's a beautiful thing.
Awesome.
Hey, before we let you go, man, I gotta get your take on this, dog. My man's Big T over there sitting on the couch. You can't see him. I told him you might have an ally, but we've never debated this part. Maybe. I don't know, though. I don't know. My man said Kobe was not a top 10 player of all time.
He's right on the verge.
Top 10.
Right
Kobe
on the
is
edge.
Definitely a top 10 player of all time.
All right. But hey, Glass's basketball knowledge, I may tip my cap to him on that one. You know what I'm saying? Like he when I get into basketball arguments with this nigga, I'm like, hold on, man. Let me Google something real quick.
Give me your top 10 then, Glasses. Who you got?
You know what my secret be about all knowledge? It didn't start when I started looking at it. It started before I ever started looking at it.
Ooh,
One thing I'm really good at is going back to the first beginning of it all and then starting there and coming forward. If I could start there and come forward, I could build anything the way I want.
So what I'm hearing
have
is
a conversation.
Bob Cousy #1 is what you're saying.
Bob Cousy, for a long time, Bob Cousy, he was only in my top 10 for a long time.
Wow.
He might still be.
No. Steph moved him out of there and put him in the top 15. Steph finally got it together. Confirmed his greatness and made it work. But Bob Cousy is in my top 15.
I feel bad for Bob Cousy because he's still alive, and now he's almost served as like a punchline when you watch First Take, you watch Undisputed, they're debating, and somebody brings up Bob Cousy, and then everybody just clowns on Bob Cousy because of the era that he played in.
It's crazy to think the inventor of the fast break, the first man that could run fast and dribble, dropping people with one hand, but you know what? The human mind can't compartmentalize what it could have been like or what the skill. People look at a buddy of mine. I'm in a dope group chat. KD, Steph Curry, all these great basketball players, right? Couple trainers, couple really smart basketball minds. And they can't help but think to themselves like, oh, well, Bob Cousy, if you put Chris Paul back in that era, it's like, that's not how it works, right? You would have to think this Chris Paul benefits from the evolution of years and years of watching basketball, being able to teach basketball, human evolution, all these benefits.
So you look at it relatively.
It has to be. There's nobody playing basketball. And you got one dude that could pass that's throwing Magic Johnson's game. His name is Magic because of the hardwood Houdini.
Yeah, it's funny because I think it's more entertaining to me to just think about Kyrie Irving getting teleported back in time to 1950, and then watching him actually kill people on the
travel
court.
And double dribble on him every play.
That's fact.
That's probably true. Yeah,
I gotta get
every play. They be like travel, double dribble.
Yeah,
I gotta get in this last question.
Yeah, you've been raising your hand like you're in first grade.
I was just wondering. You touched upon earlier that you see a lot of these young guys in Chicago with expensive guns, and you mentioned a train might have been, rigged to break in the middle of the hood, and something happened. Do you have any more details to that? Where
Billy wants to investigate.
I want to start looking into
somebody
this.
has to. I think that's what we should be doing.
We
shouldn't be looking at a bunch of high and unsober 15-year-old kids with fully automatic weapons asking, what's wrong with them? Well, they 15, poor, and fucked up. You know what I mean? That's what's wrong with them, and they high. How the fuck? Just go look at some of these drill videos. Go look at some of this shit.
There's some serious hardware.
That shit is crap. Man, I've been a gangbanger for 20 plus years. Some of this shit, you got to have some money to have. This shit ain't cheap right now. A Uzi is not cheap right now.
Like
somebody who ain't got no money but got a motherfucking Uzi, and there's no older man giving somebody their $1,500 gun.
Mm-hmm. Billy,
some of these people got guns that are working hard.
Well, I got my best man on it glasses.
Yeah, we need to really get into that. That's important, how they get the guns.
I mean, I've been looking at a lot of weapon smuggling and arms dealing in regards to the Russia-Ukraine war to see where the guns are coming from, what's going on. And for that amount of military hardware to be in Chicago, that's not something quiet. That's not something quiet. Yeah.
I can't help it. I'm like, and this little JoJo, rest his soul, this little dude that was coming up in the rap scene early on, I'm sure A is familiar with him. But it's like he was in there with a tech with a switch, and I'm like, that's about $2,000. And he don't got no money. He got a shoestring in his hands, no shirt on, bad. They can't even afford a haircut. Even if nobody would have gave you that gun, I wish I would have went to my older homies and said, man, let me get your Uzi for this video. What? I remember the first time something happened to me. Let me say this story so I can. First time something happened to me, right? I got into it with somebody. I got my first gun at 13. I was the Compton Vadio 7-0. Shout out to the 7-0s, and I know a lot of them at this point. But at that time, they started warring with all the black gangs around the community in Compton at my mom's house. It was the first one to hit up BKCK nigga killer. They was on. They was like, we gonna kill everybody around here. And me and my buddy were walking home. We were walking home, We walked together because we understood it was on at the time. They rolled up on me, pulled out a gun, stuck it out the window, holes in the, which ended up being a tech, had holes in the muzzle, blah, blah, blah. And they let us get away, but it was really frightening. So I got my first gun after that. Mind you, I had my gun for a while. Like everybody else is 22, 25, it gets stolen. You lose it. One of your friends steal it because they feel like they need it more. Fast forward, I get into it with somebody. Last year, high school, I need a gun. I go to my older homie. I'm like, hey, man, I need a gun. He's like, shit, you better go steal your own first one like I stole mine. Gun's expensive. This gun was $500. You ain't getting this gun. People not just giving people guns. I think that's one of those things that are not being talked about. They're not handing people guns just because it's Thursday. Now, if you at war and y'all about to go on a mission, I'll pass you this gun. When you get back, give me back the gun. As soon as you come back.
So what entity do you think would be pumping these guns into the community?
You know what? That's way beyond where I would even be thinking that. Like, I would have to really get into it, but you have to believe there's no way possible all of these little kids got this type of artillery. Yeah. People were talking about it was 300 murders, 2,000 shootings. Where are they getting the guns and the bullets from these poor people? Where? They not even getting no real street money. If they did, they probably wouldn't be shooting at people all the time.
All right, Billy, you're on it. Billy's going to figure this out.
Stimulus
Man,
checks.
I'm looking for that too.
Yeah, no, trust me. Billy's. I can tell when Billy latches onto something, he's like a pit bull. He's not going to let go. So
I like that.
investigative journalism.
Yeah, the investigative journalists go to all these neighborhoods with a press jacket on and just start interviewing.
That'd be
Who's
classic.
selling
And
you
they-
these?
And what's crazy is they will talk to you.
Fuck
They're not
around.
gonna shoot you. They're gonna be like, hold up.
around.
Look, Bill. This how I got my first. They're gonna start telling you. You're gonna be like,
Fuck
hold
around.
shit.
Fuck around.
I gotta grow my hair out a little.
Well, I
Crew
moved.
cut won't.
I moved to Chicago. I got boots on the ground there. I might get some answers for you, but we can do some corresponding from there, right? All right, Glasses. Thank you for joining us, man. This has been
Thanks for having me,
it's
man.
been a good conversation. I really appreciate it.
Man, I hope you did, man. Much
Always
love.
love tapping in, my G. Hey, real quick, plug anything you got, man. We got a pretty wide audience, my G. I want people to be exposed to whatever.
Just
whatever
Google
you
me,
actually
man. I'm
want.
so Googleable at this point, man, and you could just figure out which rabbit hole you want to fall down, man.
That shit. All right,
Just Google me, man.
my
It's
dog.
good.
Let us see it. All right, my G. Take care, bro.
All right, see you, man. That was a great interview. Really fascinating stuff to say from our good friend Glasses Malone, and he's brought to you by Game Time. That interview is brought to you by Game Time. They are the exclusive ticketing partner of Barstool Sports, created by fans for fans. Game Time is a ticketing app, and it gets it so it's so easy to score last-minute deals on tickets to sports, concerts, and shows. They guarantee the lowest price, too. We love Game Time. It's festival season. We got Drake. He's on tour. We got 21 Savage, SZA, Dead and Company, Chance the Rapper, Mets, Yankees, Cubs, White Sox, you name it. We got football season coming up too, but it's summer season for concerts, for baseball. I can't wait to go to some daytime baseball games out in Chicago. It's going to be great. Game Time is so easy to use. They've hooked us up in the past. They've sent us to games, and it is the easiest way to buy a ticket. Point blank. You get the best deals on last-minute price drops, and you can share them seamlessly with your friends, with your family. The purchase process takes just 2 taps and 10 seconds. Once you buy those tickets, they're delivered directly to your phone. You don't need a printer. The app also allows you to easily share tickets with friends via text, so you can get into the game seamlessly. Skip the hassle. Enjoy the moment. Are you guys going to any game soon?
I just went to a Yankees game with Game Time.
Oh, yeah?
This weekend.
Good seats?
Great seats.
Awesome. Was it super easy to use?
Yeah, cheap too.
Love it.
Yeah.
What about you, Big T? You going to see any baseball this summer?
Yeah, first weekend that I'm moving to Chicago, the Braves are there.
Okay. Game Time.
Yep.
Hook it up for our man Big T. I'm sure they will. I'm sure you'll get a great ticket. Download the Game Time app. Go to the website. Enter your email. Redeem code MACRO. Boom. $20 off your first purchase. Some terms apply, but it's that simple. Just download the app. Enter your email. Redeem code MACRO. Get $20 off your first purchase. $20 in your pocket. You can buy probably 2.5 beers at the ball game. 2.5 beers on us on Game Time. Promo code MACRO. Get $20 off your first purchase. Some terms apply. All right, that was a fascinating interview. Yeah, I enjoyed talking to him. He seems like a very cool guy.
Yeah, Glass is a good dude, man. He so a lot of the I think gangs and gang members in general get like a lot of, bad flack because of the crimes they commit and, you know what I'm saying, the carnage that they cause, quote unquote. But when you know them and you meet them, you realize they're just people. And there's some heinous shit that goes on, but they just try to survive. A lot of cats that's the environment that they're in. But a lot of them are really good human beings. Like the majority of gang members that I know, good dudes.
Where'd
really
you meet
good.
him?
I met him through a mutual friend, actually, who was a dude who I grew up around in San Diego, who was also a gang member. But I met him through him.
Did you ever get any pressure when you were growing up to join a gang, or were they just all supportive? Like, listen, you got something special going on. Don't mess with us.
Yeah, the majority of cats that like have like shit going for them, they don't like the smarter ones. Will be like, I don't want no part of this. Like you don't get no part of this.
Yeah, that's what MS-13 told me growing up when I was on their block. They said, listen, I know you really like pupusas, but that doesn't make you El Salvadorian, man. Go out, do what you want to do. Don't fall in with us.
Yes, I saw you talking the other day. You got podcasting potential.
Yeah, it wasn't invented yet, but they knew. They knew.
They knew.
Yeah, he was a very interesting guy for sure. Gave me some good perspective to think about. Yeah. It's really, when you look at how he was framing the whole like, okay, this is our neighborhood. We're gonna step up and bang for our neighbors or friends or family. That's kind of how Europe was formed. Just countries are formed basically by gangs.
Yeah.
They have force. They have territory. They have land. They're protecting their people.
They expand.
They try to get other resources.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eastern Europe is basically one big gang.
I mean, the Balkans.
Yeah. When Donnie and I were at the World Cup over in Qatar, and we talked to this guy from Bulgaria, and I think we've talked about it on this show a little bit, but he was like talking about how they all hate their neighboring countries in Eastern Europe, but they're basically the same people. They just hate each other.
How big is the Balkans compared to LA?
A much bigger.
Much bigger, yeah.
I would say the Balkans region is probably
the size of Texas.
Yeah.
How big is the Balkans?
Probably a little bit smaller than Texas.
What is the Balkans?
The Balkans is a region in Europe that's above Greece and to the right of Italy. It's like
it might be
the left of Turkey.
It might be Texas sized.
Size of Balkans. Size of Balkans compared to states.
That's where you would consider Jokic to be Balkan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They be ballin' in the Balkans.
They do.
Balkans be ballin'.
They definitely do. Big T, what'd you think of the interview?
It was really good. It was interesting.
Yeah. I liked your question.
That's something that you don't get to ask many people.
Yeah. Do you clock in for work at the gang?
Yeah, like are there meetings?
You get sick days?
Yeah.
There are meetings. They do have some meetings. Like
you would have to.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. You know what's kind of cool? Every culture just has some type of element of a bunch of dudes just hanging out somewhere, like avoiding, like
women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah.
Dudes rock.
Huh.
Fascinating, Bill.
I was gonna say responsibilities, but yeah.
Yeah, women have the same thing though.
Yeah.
They get their wine clubs, their book clubs.
But it's more like the avoiding responsibilities.
Women are much more proactive when it comes to their leisurely groups that they get together with. Like they're usually trying to do something to better themselves. Guys, it's just like get away from any opportunity to better ourselves. Make ourselves worse. That's what guys do when we hang out.
I'm okay with that. Guys in groups, outcomes usually not that good. Girls in groups, they're trying to better.
Yep.
I'm okay with that.
Shout out women.
So California is probably the closest place in size to the Balkans.
Okay.
Which makes sense with all the gang activity in California.
Yeah. Where do the Albanians fall if they were sitting in California, Billy?
Dude, the Albanians are Oakland.
Yeah.
100%, dude.
Billy's had a thing recently against Albanians.
It's not against Albanians, in respect of Albanians.
Okay, you have a healthy respect for them.
Yeah. I know a lot of Albanians.
Which country do you disrespect the most?
France.
Yeah.
Shout out.
That's where Paul Gasol's from.
Yep. Southern France. Southern France.
He's from Catalonia, not Spain.
Okay, I want to embrace debate. Somebody sent me this Reddit clip of it's one of those like embrace debate things or hypothetical situations. I want to know specifically Big T's answer to this question. If you had to recite 90% of a movie and you would get $100,000 for getting it 90% correct, what movie would you take?
Fever Pitch.
Really?
If you love me enough to sell your tickets, I love you enough not to let you.
Wow.
I for sure 90% easy.
Get us started.
Off the top of the head or like while it's playing?
While it's playing. Like, I mean, I don't recall every single scene right now, but as it comes up, I would.
Yeah.
Like, the opening scene is him talking about his Uncle Carl, and his mom puts him in the car with the uncle and is like, you take him somewhere. Then he takes him to Fenway Park. And then, and he talks about how he fell in love with baseball and all this stuff.
Goodfellas has got a pretty easy first couple lines of dialogue.
Yeah, but it's also like 3 hours long.
I know that's the hard part.
And
but like,
that's not 90%.
I know, but you could be like,
Yeah,
ever
mine-
since
Easy. I guarantee I could do Ratatouille without a question.
No doubt?
Mm-hmm.
How's it start?
It starts of they're zooming in on the TV and he goes, Oh, man. He goes. I might butcher it, but I'm pretty sure this is how it goes. Um, Everyone agrees the best food in the world is made from France, and everybody agrees that the best food in France is made in Paris. Uh, and all the best food in Paris is made by Chef Gus Gusteau.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but if it played, I could recite all that shit. And then that's just like the little intro, and then it starts. It zooms in on some house with some gunfire, and then it zooms in, and boom, the rat Remy he jumps out of the window holding a big book, which is Chef Gus Gusteau's cookbook.
Uh-huh.
And then he goes, "This is me. It's apparent I really need to rethink my life a little bit." He's like, "As you can see, I'm a rat, and being a rat isn't easy." And fuck, now I'm kind of I'm butchering the lines, but that's
a good one. That's
yeah,
such a good one.
I guarantee I could do it while it's playing, though. I guarantee it.
As far back as I remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. I think that's the opening line.
Okay, so you've gotten maybe the entire opening line correct.
And there was Joey Bats.
Mm-hmm. I would do I was gonna say Forrest Gump, but that's too long.
I think
That's a
this
long
question
movie.
means as it's playing.
As it's playing, as it's
Has to
playing,
be.
I would
Yeah.
nail Forrest
I mean,
Gump.
nobody could do it off the dome.
They sending me to Vietnam. It's this whole other country.
Is that problematic?
I'm doing an impression of Tom Hanks.
Who's doing an impression of the kid who played young Forrest Gump in the movie. That's how the kid actually talked. And Tom Hanks sat with the kid and listened to him talk.
You're talking about Haley Joel Osment? Wasn't that?
No.
Forrest's son?
No, not Forrest's son. Young Forrest. Like
Oh,
the
when
one
he gets
running.
chased by the bikes, yeah.
Turns out that kid had the real Forrest Gump accent.
Huh.
And he just sat there listening to him talk. And that's how he developed the Forrest Gump accent, because it's supposed to be childlike
Yeah.
and Southern. And that kid was childlike and Southern. So he just imitated that kid the whole time.
Mama was a real smart lady.
You do a mean Forrest Gump.
I know I
think
do.
you've said it several times. Like,
Mama
you
always said.
do the point with the shoes.
Shit.
Those must be comfortable
Skinny,
shoes.
skinny rain, sideways rain, big old fat rain.
Big old fat rain.
Dude, but the point, he does the point too. I don't know what it is. He's just like,
I cut that grass for free. Lieutenant Dan said we don't have to worry about money anymore.
No, that was the one me and my brother used to always, when he's sitting up in the hospital bed, he said, "Lieutenant Dan, you want some ice cream?" Lieutenant Dan, ice cream. and then another funny one that I'm thinking about it though is when he gets in a fight with some dude over there because Jenny, he always chasing Jenny. And then it was at a Black Panther party. And he goes, he said, "Sorry to ruin your Black Panther party." Oh, he had some takes on him, bro. That's
He did.
hilarious.
well, perfect transition. Black Panthers into maybe our topic for the day.
So the Black Panther Party, they were around, and then they tried to, as we talked to Glasses Malone about, they tried to exercise their Second Amendment rights to bear arms, and then the government took away their weapons and said, no, you can't do that. And they were instrumental in starting, I guess, the advent of gang culture in California. Am I way off on that?
It's a good start. Yeah, it's a good start.
In the dissolving of the Black Panther movement, I'm seeing here that the Crips then picked up by combining gangs and spreading.
All right,
Their
so are we?
influence.
Let's talk about this accurately. If we're gonna talk
Yeah,
about this.
yeah.
Are we getting into it?
Yeah.
How are we getting into it? So today's topic is the history of Los Angeles gang. And this topic was always interesting to me because my father grew up in Carson, California, which is next door to Compton. And so like you hear all these stories. And then growing up in the 90s, the gang wars that was involved was a part of our culture. I'm sure you heard the East Coast versus West Coast beef in rap, with a West Coast beef, which is where, my hip hop influence and my influence came from, was highly influenced by gang culture and and its origins, especially like, what they would politicize as the Bloods versus Crips, when it's a lot more nuanced than that. So the history of it is actually fascinating. I would invite anybody and then direct them to a documentary called Bastards of the Party, to kind of detail a brief history of it. And they do a really good job from the perspective of one of the dudes who was Athens Park Blood. He does a really good job of detailing and asking all the older cats that was there, historians of Los Angeles, to kind of compile the story of how it actually got together. Now that documentary is almost 2 hours, so we ain't gonna document all that. I just wanted to touch on some of the highlights of the history of it. So an important part of the story is how Black folks were kind of refugee from the South, driven out of the South and migrated west because they were terrorized by white folks in white communities that didn't want them there. And what they found when they got there is the exact same shit. A lot of cities along the coast of California, you could just look into the history of the cities. It was a lot of the same stuff. But so you get segregated into these communities, right? And they were actually prospering. If you talk to a lot of like African-American history professors, people that study this, they would argue that desegregation it wasn't good for the Black community. It ruined a lot of the economic prowess that was there. So a lot of if you just think about it rationally for a second, if we live in a neighborhood and you're only buying from that neighborhood, so if something's wrong with my car, I go to a mechanic, that's a Black mechanic. I go to a Black bank, I go to a Black gas station, maybe not a Black bank, but you go to they did have Black banks. You go to Black everything, laundromat, all of that stuff, and all that money stays in that community. So there's jobs, there's a lot of these things that when you desegregate, and there's a bunch of variables as to why it happens, but a lot of these jobs start drying up in these communities. And a lot of these factory jobs, which is a big rise, which I'll allude to it a little bit later. So they had something called Central Avenue in Los Angeles, and it was a music scene with like jazz nightclubs, stuff like that. And there was a chief of police by the name of William H. Parker. William H. Parker was a racist, which a lot of people was back then, but it's racism with power is a very dangerous combination. So he was the chief of police that literally used to recruit Southern whites that had military background and were segregationists to join the police force in Los Angeles. And so this is the beginnings of the Los Angeles police force that used to terrorize some of these communities. And so as a lot of this documentation can be looked up, there was literally what they called the California Eagle, which was a Black paper. It showed how when the integration started happening and how the tension started to grow, how they would document, this kid got beat up here, this kid got beat up here. I mean, kind of like they do now, but it was in the newspaper. And what is very rarely ever reported on is they used to have white gangs. They used to have white gangs that used to click up and go mess with people. They called them, what were they? Spook hunters. So the white gangs was called spook hunters. So they used to call Black folks spooks. And they used to click up. A bunch of white gangs used to click up, and they used to just go fuck with people. And they had jackets. They had jackets, and on their jackets it was a man being lynched. And so a lot of the inner city young youth, they were like, fuck this. And so they started clicking up to protect. And you listen to them talk. Some of these cats are still alive. They listen to talk. They used to fight the white boys. We used to go over to, and like a lot of places like Compton, Gardena, Inglewood, these places that are notoriously Black right now, they used to be white. They used to be white neighborhoods. But these white gangs would terrorize Black communities. Black communities started fighting back. And of course, police are involved in all of that. And it causes the racial tension to rise. Now, if you're familiar with just, I guess, segregation or desegregation in America in general, there's a term that historians like to refer to as white flight. So when a lot of African Americans started moving into these neighborhoods, a lot of white folks started moving out, and that's how suburbs were created. And that's why you hear a lot about inner city is because in the city, black folks, that's where everything was prosperous. Black folks started moving in, white folks they started moving out. And that's literally around this time. This is when you have Board versus Brown, the Brown versus the Board of Education. Where literally they're desegregating schools. And so that's where the popular term white flight is, because they're like, we just don't want to be around them. And so and then if you're looking at detailed, the white population in LA County in 1950 was 93.4%. And then I think in 1980, it was all the way down to 24.6%. So it's a very real effects that had on the surrounding communities and then the economy, right? And then when you start to look at the race relations in general, you start to think about things in a broad sense. So there were factions that started to build. Now, this is all in conjunction with all of the civil rights going on in the entirety of the USA. And so you have all these landmark decisions, Brown versus Board of Education, all of these things that are happening, desegregation, Martin Luther King, civil rights movement, all this stuff is happening. But in factions, people start to organize, right? And the Black Panthers were very instrumental in a lot of Black communities. They had different chapters. They, I think, originally started in Oakland, right? And when they realized what was going on in LA, they realized that we needed a chapter in Los Angeles. And in like, you'll hear a lot of like right-wing people today say the Black Panthers were a terrorist organization. They'll say that shit all the time. I've argued with them, Tommy Lauren, all those guys, Ben Shapiro, they'll all say that it's a terrorist organization, right? But they don't ever think about, maybe they do, who knows? But what they were, the Black Panthers were they were a retaliatory organization for the trauma that they were that was hoisted upon them in their communities. So you have police officers who were trained and recruited to fuck with you, people getting arrested in high rates, all this stuff, just terrorized. And so they wanted to organize, they wanted to unionize, they wanted to bring forth opportunities. And so the Black Panther created a bunch of programs, free education programs, free breakfast programs, health clinics, like all of this stuff that is presumably anti-American, because what ended up happening was J. Edgar Hoover put out a statement that actually said the Black Panther Party is the biggest threat to national security in America right now. So J. Edgar Hoover is on record doing this. And so as all of these community organizations are starting to grow and seeing a lot of benefits from it, as humans do, there's different ideologies that happen. And so I mentioned it with the Glasses Malone interview. They had the US organization by a guy by the name of Ron Karinga. They were a little less abrasive. They were a little less confrontational. They wanted to more work on like the legislative side, which Black Panthers did too, but they were just a little less confrontational. But they started to rival the Black Panthers. Now, infighting will always happen in any organization, in any organizational movement. And so that starts happening. And what has been documented and what's fascinating to me about this entire thing is J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI initiated a program, which I think we've talked about on this episode, on this podcast before, which is COINTELPRO. Now, COINTELPRO was a legitimate federal operation to try to dissolve a lot of these organizations, specifically the Black Panthers. And so they found, and this is like all this isn't a conspiracy, it's all documented. They found documents of plans to infiltrate all of these organizations. And then specifically talking about the Los Angeles County ones, the US organization and the Black Panther organization, they had conflicting views. So they started running cross propaganda. And so what they did was they started fueling the fire of an ongoing beef between these organizations. There's a guy by the name of Bunchy Carter. Bunchy Carter was like the head of the Black Panther chapter in Los Angeles, who was heralded. They loved him, and they touched millions of lives and the things that they were able to do. Bunchy Carter was killed along with another Black Panther member in a meeting with the US organization. Now, the FBI has came out and said that they didn't pull the trigger, but they definitely facilitated ongoing feuds with both sides. They participated in the cross propaganda and fueling the fire to try to dissolve those organizations. Now,
I think real quick.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think we should at least touch on redlining and the housing market, because that had a big part to play too. We could probably honestly spend like an entire episode talking about redlining, but especially in California, you can look up old redlining maps of the city of Los Angeles, and you can see block by block, here are the neighborhoods that are marked hazardous, and those hazardous neighborhoods are primarily occupied by Black Americans, Mexican Americans, Asian Americans, and like Italians. Those are the neighborhoods that were marked as being the most dangerous. And then that map that the government created was put into policy, and banks would then use the redlining maps when they were determining whether or not they could give home loans to people that are trying to buy a house. Those are the poorest neighborhoods. Those are the ones that were considered hazardous to be in, and banks would not give loans to people that were trying to move into those neighborhoods. They also wouldn't give loans to people who were trying to improve the houses. If you were lucky enough to be a homeowner in that neighborhood, you couldn't go to the bank and say, hey, I've got a job, I've got credit, I would like to receive $50,000, redo a bathroom, redo my kitchen. You couldn't do that. They would not give you loans for that. So what ended up happening was those neighborhoods became poorer and poorer and poorer, because most people didn't own their own homes there, and the people that did were then not permitted to improve their homes, which decreases property values as they fall into disrepair across the board. So it prevented generations of people from purchasing a home, from being able to purchase a home. And people who were lucky enough to grow up in families that had been established in the United States, that weren't subjected to those rules, that weren't unlucky enough to live in a neighborhood like that. What happens is your great-great-grandparents, your great-great-great-grandparents own a home. That house increases in value as time goes by. That money, that wealth gets passed down through generation, because owning real estate in America has been the best investment that you can make over the years. It gives you stability as a family. It gives you something to fall back on when times are tough. You've got equity in your home. You can sell your home if you want to, make money off of it. You can take out a loan against the value of your home. You can get cash in your pocket if you absolutely need cash. But there's generations and generations of minorities who were explicitly denied that opportunity by the government to ever start to build wealth for their families. So they were put into these neighborhoods, kept in these neighborhoods, and then people wonder why they start to feel like they have to rally together to protect themselves. Like it makes sense.
Yeah, on top of that, literally you have a police force, a police chief who was a known racist, who would hire racists and have policy in their departments to terrorize these communities. So on top of all of that, yes, yeah, and that's a great point that I just skimmed over the fact. But you're 1,000% correct. Redlining had everything to do with the formation of these communities. On top, not only I got you 1 second, Billy. Not only on top of that, when white flight happens, right? A lot of the businesses are still in the cities, so you need ways to commute back from the suburbs. So what happened is a lot of these governments took out contractors, and they literally put highways directly in the middle of these neighborhoods, which displaced people. And like if you were just to get displaced and you're living check to check, it's very hard to get back on your feet. But that didn't just happen in LA. That happened all across America. You can look at maps like Detroit, early 50s, all these cities, they literally used to just put like a lot of like the 110 freeway or what Glass was talking about. They literally just put that directly through a neighborhood. They don't care. They didn't care. And so all of that in the culmination with the societal factors, it's just never going to be a positive. When
you talk about, a lot of people like to be like, oh, they're saying highways. They're saying highways are racist, and like people laugh about it because in their minds it's like, people are talking about like the materials, the concrete, the cement, the fact that there's a road. How can a road be racist? But it's the city planning. City planning can 100% be racist.
Yeah, they call it environmental racism. That gets scoffed at a lot. My sister actually wrote her dissertation on food deserts. Food deserts are a part of that displacement, and where a community isn't around a neighboring grocery store that has really good access to really good food, and so they're forced to eat junk. And so like that, those kind of environmental factors absolutely factor into the totality of what we would deem oppression in America. I know it's a hot topic in today's world, but when you start to look at the policies that have been implemented throughout our history, you can see the pattern in which it has developed, from the policing to the redlining to like all of these things. The only logical conclusion is that is some kind of backlash, right? Everybody would push back at some point, and I think these are a part of those communities pushing back, in a sense, and saying fuck that, we're not going to take it anymore, right? They might not even know the implications of why they was pushing back. They just felt it, right? And I don't want to discredit anybody that did, but it's a very real thing when you feel that and when you're going through it and when your family's going through it.
Billy, what were you gonna say?
I was just going to comment quickly on remember in the OJ trial, one of the police officers who was in LA was like a known Nazi, and like just how crazy that the LA Police Department's been totally operating from its beginning is like a total like fascist type regime.
You're talking about Mark Furman?
Yeah.
The guy that was, they asked him, like, have you ever said the N-word, or have you said the N-word recently? He was like, no. And then they had just like tapes and tapes and tapes. It was like his favorite word to use. It was wild how many times he said that shit.
Yeah. Yeah, but so I mean, a lot of that, like you said, it led to the Watts riots in 1965. There was a kid, and I forget his name. I didn't write it down because I didn't even think about bringing up redlining and all that shit. But there was Watts riots in 1965, where I think some kid got pulled over for with a cop. I think he said it was drunk driving, but there was bystanders looking, and they could just see it was like bullshit going on. And I think for like 6 or 7 days, people just went crazy because they were just tired of the shit. And that ended up leading to the youth communally getting together, thinking about how we got to do something. And from that, from the decimation of the Black Panther organization through the COINTEL program and the murder and assassination, which some could call it assassination, from Butchie Carter, and all of these organizations that were just dissipating. And they literally had I think it was like a 4-hour shootout with LAPD. Now that I'm thinking about it, there was like a 4-hour shootout with LAPD with the Black Panthers. And one of the guys who was militarily trained the Black Panthers how to arm themselves. But a lot of cats got locked up from that. So the youth is seeing all of this, and on top of all the economic factors, they band together, and a lot of the cats in those neighborhoods, looking for opportunities. The early starts of it had a lot to do with factory jobs being lost in droves. If you like look at the history of Los Angeles County, there were factory jobs. All those cats, like my grandfather worked for the city of LA for the entirety of me being a child, my dad being a child. This is back in the 50s, 60s. All those factory jobs dried up. They closed down, they went away, and it pushed a lot of those cats in those communities out of the job market. And so people needed work, people needed to survive. And so what ended up happening in the 70s was and this is what Glasses was talking about, was the media has a very big role to play in the it's like a media is like in lockstep, and entertainment is in lockstep with what's going on in our culture, right? So a lot of these things can influence, but a lot of these things are just representative of what's going on. And so movies like Superfly, what we would call blaxploitation, movies like Superfly would come out, stuff like that. And it became less about community, right? And it more about, I'm gonna get mine. Like that was literally the mindset. It was like, I'm gonna get mine, I'm gonna be fly, I'm gonna do this, whoop-de-whoop. that mindset kind of starts to permeate all over, really. And in that, you got a lot of bravado, a lot of stuff going on in that realm. And there's guys by the name of Raymond Washington, Tookie Williams. I think there's one more, but those are the originators and giving credit for the origins of the Crips. And where they were just big dudes, like if you type in Tookie Williams, Raymond, they was big dudes and were just known how to fight. They just knew how to fight. And so neighborhoods that were, had problems with each other, they would like literally just click up and go fight cats. And so after a while, they would try to recruit to try to grow the brand of what Crips were. And I think originally the Crips, it was Community Revolution and Progress. That was an acronym. And so they even had, I think they sent a letter to the mayor or something like that. Because after the Black Panthers dissolved, this was like the organization and the union that they were kind of like thinking about doing, but it took a different spin. And so the mayor, I think if I'm remembering it correctly, the mayor sent a letter back saying, don't use revolution because, that's loosely tied to the Black Panther Party and all that stuff. And they changed it to, I'm forgetting what they changed it to. Unimportant. So as Tookie Williams and Raymond Washington, as they go about, South Central LA trying to expand their brand, which being the Crips, a lot of cats already had their own shit set up in their neighborhoods. And they end up saying, nah, we cool off that. We fighting back. And so they used to get into tussles and fight back, and it became like a warring kind of environment. But no guns was being used yet. It was just like all hand-to-hand shit. It was fighting. And then that's how the development of blood started in LA, was just in response to these Crip members running around trying to fight everybody or, get them on board what they was doing. And, sooner or later conflict ensues. Guns end up getting involved in the play. And this is what I think we enter into the era of what I think is inherited now, is what I would call like an inherited war. And so this is what I feel like the gangs of today thrive off of, and the gangs I grew up on thrived off of. It's an inherited war. And so the origins of it, looking back, are very petty, but when you compile everything involved, makes sense. But if you can imagine, a lot like we were talking to Glasses, it's like a lot of these communities, they grew up and with the sets that they from, it's a street, it's a block, it's a neighborhood that they from, to where that's my guy, it's my best friend, this is my cousin, we all live in the same place, and we're warring with somebody across the way, a couple streets down. Now they killed somebody in my neighborhood. If you've ever dealt with death, you understand how emotionally attached you get to that person. Now, if you can point a finger at why somebody that you love died, justice is much easier served in your mind to somebody who doesn't have the emotional capacity to deal with death. And so what they call street justice is revenge, an eye for an eye. It's not a new concept. It's an old concept that's been going on for humans forever. You take one of mine, I take one of yours. And this inherited war has spread, right? And we just talking about in the 70s. In the 80s, you introduce the drug gang. You introduce the cartels bringing all of these drugs in our neighborhoods. And it wasn't just them, it was all across America. All across America, drugs was being brought in to fund a war in South America. And they were profiting off it, but also everybody in the neighborhoods was too. It was feeding the neighborhoods. A lot of these dope boys was getting stuff for kids. It was, buying cars, buying clothes. And it was the first time that the neighborhoods had real prosperous money in a long time. Cats was making millions of dollars in the 80s, off of this shit. You're killing your community, but, they eating, right? And so they had to deal with that emotional toll as well. And so you introduce money being in the fold. Now, these territories that are arbitrarily drawn mean a lot more, because we control this drug area, right? We control this is how we distribute our product. And then the war gets heightened. And this is why you have that high crime spike in the 90s, where massive amounts of cats was getting killed because of the drug war, the continued and inherited war that had been going on for a decade. All of these things accumulated really started taking a hold I think it nationwide in the 90s, late 90s, late 80s, early 90s, when rap really started getting its legs. Rap was, made in New York, and it was like the voice of the inner city, is the voice of the youth, which had a lot going on similar to South Central Los Angeles, but South Central is the birthplace of gangster rap, right? That rap was new, and that rap detailed this is why they used to have like colors, like banging on wax back in the day. In the 90s, if you've never heard that, go check out like old banging on wax. It was cats detailing very similarly what's going on today, like in drill rap, what's going on in the neighborhoods, but they did it from a more peaceful perspective. Drill rap now is just more, brazenly boasting about the shit. But they were still detailing the shit that they were going through way back in the day. And so I think anytime you have an entertainment value to any kind of impoverished cycle, people glorify that. And I think that's what happened with gangs in general, and why the Crips you can find Crips and Bloods in London now.
There's an allure to listen to music that, they're talking about stuff that you only see in movies, and it's glamorized, and you're like, oh, this guy is like, he's out there actually like shooting people. It's wild. There's like a morbid curiosity to it, and then people want to feel like they're real men, like these people that they're listening to, and then they start to adopt that as part of their own personality, and it kind of it feeds and spreads.
Yeah, and if you look at it, we've always had a lore for that in America. If you look at what is Billy the Kid known for?
Yeah, outlaw movies,
cowboy movies, like these gunslinger type. We've always had an allure for blood. Bloodshed sells. Bloodshed is interesting. It's entertainment. But it's when it's in collaboration with real lives and real people that are affected by it, that's when it's a very dangerous combination. Mm-hmm. Then that's why I feel like gang culture and gang I guess affiliation spreads so fast, was because there is an allure to it, especially when you're growing up and don't have anything, and you see cats with the nice rims and the cars and they got the girls, and you don't have nothing. You like, well, shit, I want to do that. You know what I mean? Like there's an allure to it that doesn't always tell the other side, and the other side is death in jail.
Glasses was talking about how one way to unite Crips and Bloods or different neighborhood gangs would be if there was a financial reward to it. Ultimately, if it can be good for business for certain groups to collaborate with each other, eventually they will make that decision. They'll figure out a way to do that. There's another thing though that could unite that. That's just a common enemy. If you have a common enemy, then anybody can team up for a little bit and fight against that thing, that entity. Like if China invaded California, if their military came over and like stormed Long Beach, you would see the U.S. military, the National Guard, go down to Inglewood, and they would team up with like people in these gangs that had this weaponry, and they'd be like, okay, help us fight in the streets. And that would be the beginning of a beautiful thing if China invaded.
Pro-China PFT.
Just to make us stronger. Iron sharpens iron, just like he said. Like if China came over here and started to police our streets, then we would link up and we would defend our territory against them.
A Japanese general once said that a mainland invasion of the U.S. would be impossible because there's a gun behind every blade of grass.
Yeah. I'd love to see Canada try to invade Chicago.
Why would they?
Bring it, bitch.
The funny part is you mentioned is like in early 90, like 92, 93, there was, after the Rodney King riots. So Rodney King, very similarly to the Watts riots, was for people that don't know, was Rodney King was a victim of police brutality, and it was caught on camera. And so they literally pulled him out of the car and beat the shit out of him for like, I don't know, like 10 minutes. They just was wailing on him. He was whole face swollen, looked like Hitch, looked like from the movie Hitch. He was just fucked up. And that shit caused so much civil unrest, so much so that there was a peace treaty. There was cats in all these neighborhoods saying, okay, let's stop this shit and unite around a common enemy. And that common enemy was the police. And so there was about 2-month period in LA where the gangs were unified. But again, what ended up happening was the police started spreading propaganda throughout the news and the media, saying how it's nefarious, don't trust it. this gang still doesn't mess with, like, all of that same stuff that happened with COINTELPRO. The media started doing that, and the police started doing that, and once again, they had no. And when you talk to them, the cats that went through it, most of them say like they was united for there was, you know, a cause, and they was with it, but after a while, they had no like real leadership, and they had no goal. You know what I'm saying? Okay, we unite, then what, right? And this is where 1,000 different ideas could have been coming to the fold, but I just don't feel like it's very profitable for there to be gangs in these neighborhoods for police officers. If there's no crime, these police forces don't get these budgets that they get. Crime is very profitable for America. War is very profitable for America. Now, I'm not saying that they cause it per se, but I think they turn a blind eye to a lot of it because it's profitable. And they don't really want to be solution based because this is how they eat. I strongly believe that.
Interesting. A lot to think about.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, so just from my research, there's some just on how the inner workings of the gang operate. They have their own sign language. Well, not just flashing signs, like literally like indicating, like, you know, like identifying like enemies, like if they're about to, like, it's very interesting reading.
Pigeons?
Like, no, not pigeons.
No,
like,
they use some
Identifying
some pigeons.
who?
like wiping your face identifies police in the area.
No, not enemies. What?
Ops.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, good,
Ops,
good
yeah.
point. Good point. I have seen videos of kids that are in gangs doing, you know, they're throwing up all sorts of different signs. Some of these kids are just, if they applied themselves to learning American Sign Language, they would be incredible at it.
Yeah,
like just the manual dexterity, real quick. It is like Billy's like, you know, kind of joking a little bit, but he's also kind of like it is like its own language.
Well, no, they even said it's indicating in public quietly, like certain things, like so this is for the Bloods in Virginia. I'm reading this report, and basically, like, for example, having their leaning on something with their leg up means that they're carrying a weapon.
Okay.
I do have a weapon.
I do that all the time by mistake.
Yeah. And now I'm like, I do this all the time. Like, I'd be accidentally signaling stuff.
Arian, I've learned a lot from what you've talked about. I'd like to share something with you you might not be familiar with about a fear that a lot of white kids have growing up, is that I can't wear my red Washington Nationals hat because somebody might think that I'm in the Bloods. There's sometimes like, oh man, am I wearing the wrong color? People will know that you're not actually a member of the Bloods if you wear a Cincinnati Reds jersey in a neighborhood that has a heavy Crip population. They'll know. Yeah. Trust me.
Also, I listened to Nipsey talk about this one time. Nipsey Hussle, rest in peace. He explained it brilliantly. He was saying how it's like when you went to go on missions, when it's like when dudes went to go catch a body, right? He said, when I'm running around looking for somebody, he said, I see a little Asian or Asian woman or you know, he was like a nerdy white dude or whatever. He's like, he's like, they not even on my radar. He said the transformation happened for him. He says, when I realized I was looking for somebody that looked like me. And that was a very powerful self-realization from somebody who, and for those that know, everybody knows Nipsey was one of the biggest street gangs in LA was Rolling 60 Crips, and he was a part of that set. And so he was talking about his, you know, experiences, and one of the powerful things that he realized was like, I'm running around looking for somebody like me, and that's how they identify. So to like what you was saying, it was like they didn't really bother other. I mean, there might be some robberies and stuff like that, but like for the most part, this is why they say crime is proximal, like, and why I understand why people will call them serial killers and stuff like that, but it's it's an environmental factor that they're not accounting for, which is they're not running around looking to kill people for fun, just to do it, or they get a kick off of it. You know, they might get a kick off of the social clout that they get in getting bodies, you know, stripes on your shirt, notches on your belt. He's not to be fucked with. So that social clout, that social currency is a very real motivation for a lot of these cats to run around and gain that kind of reverence in the neighborhoods. And so like I understand both sides, but I just lean more towards like it's an environmental factor. Like a lot of these cats wouldn't kill if it wasn't for the environment that they were placed in.
It's like World War One, the Christmas armistice when they started playing soccer.
Yeah.
The Germans and the English, like they would be playing soccer if they didn't have commanding officers telling them to keep fighting. I think they like said like if you try to initiate another armistice, like a commanding officer will shoot you.
Mm-hmm.
But something really cool, I don't know, just like how it spread. Just reading about the more of the history. So like the Crips were the dominant sort of gang until the Bloods were like, wait, we don't like these guys. Like different groups start to unite together against the Crips because the Crips were the majority at that time.
Yep.
And from what I understand now, the West Coast is primarily Crips, whereas the Bloods have expanded much more into the East Coast. And
it depends on the city. So LA is predominantly Crips. San Diego is largely Bloods. I think in the North it's just different. It's a different culture. It's not like Southern California. There are gangs, but it's not the same. But and I don't know the demographics of Crips versus Blood and the percentage, but in Southern California, that's majority the case. And the spreading of it, a lot of it isn't like there are some cats who like older heads who went from LA and set up shop in other neighborhoods in other places. That did happen to where it's like you'll have like brims in another state or something like that, right? That did happen. But the majority of the Blood sets that are out there, there's no affiliation with any sets from Los Angeles. It's just they saw the lore, thought it was cool. Mm-hmm. We are also a neighborhood organization. Let's call ourselves a Blood gang.
Yeah.
Like
One of the best marketing tools that the Crips have had is the crip walking. Crip walking is awesome.
You ever seen Blood walk?
No, what's that?
They have a walk. I can't do it.
Well, the marketing for crip walking is just so much better.
Well, it was first, right? The biggest, most known Crip in the world is Snoop. And one of the biggest, most lovable characters that you know is Snoop.
Yeah,
Snoop is by far the most famous rapper that has ever been. By far.
Yeah, I mean, you see Snoop. Snoop is everywhere. Like on ABC. He's interviewing Martha Stewart and shit.
Everywhere. He had a show with Martha Stewart. Bro.
He's on Corona lovable. Commercials.
He's lovable. So I did a podcast with Snoop, right? Y'all should check it out if you ever get a chance. I did a podcast with him. I sat down. This was before like everybody had a podcast, so it was new. And so he was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And so we talked to him. And like I grew up loving Snoop, and like I knew him of the Snoop of today, which is like. He's on all these brands. He's doing all these things. He's moving. He's a businessman. But sitting down with him, you forget he's a gangbanger from South Central Los Angeles, Long Beach. He's from Long Beach, and he'll tell you that. And so, like, you forget until you hear his diction. You tell he talks like, no, he's from it. He's from it. And so it's like you really forget because he popularized his neighborhood in a way that was like profitable to him. Mm-hmm. But so like that, that crip walking shit. That's a way of life. A lot of them took issue when it got popularized, right? Like in blood walking, I only know it because San Diego is not as popular because they're like the Bloods that were famous weren't really from like Wayne. Lil Wayne is a Blood, but he's not really from LA, so it didn't really catch on like anything else. Like Snoop did. Snoop is from that whole terrain, so it was just different.
I'm watching a video right now of blood walking. You can find anything on YouTube. How to blood walk in 2021 dance tutorial.
Yeah, I have what happens if one of these become like a TikTok trend and like it doesn't like it goes viral?
It's already happened. Crip walking was Lil Bow Wow was crip walking and like a bunch of Crips took issue with it, because it was used to, but like that was pre social media. Well, it was like during the YouTube age, but it was before people understood like. There is no. What's interesting now as an older head watching this generation is like, and I think I've said this before, I've alluded to it. Like, there's really no, like the culture that has developed in all of these different cities, like New York, for example, right? That culture is kind of going away. The culture in LA is kind of going away. Like all the culture of the subsets in the different regions in America is going away because the internet has brought everybody together intellectually, where we all have a meeting place of the minds. And so, like, I'll be up playing video games and I hear the same dialect from all these kids, like, you know, when they talk shit, like a bunch of white kids saying nigga. I'll hear what's famous, like I don't know, but they'll be like, bro is really doing it. Like, bro is it's like the shit that we grew up saying, like all these white kids are saying now, which was like not the case when we was growing up. And so it's like it's wild to see the mending of cultures, and so much so as you see, you know, so it's why, like, you'll see, I was scrolling on my YouTube the other day, and some short popped up. It was like some Mexican kids who went to Chicago, 63rd and St. Lawrence Street, where this is who King Von used to rival with. And so they went to 63rd and St. Lawrence and played King Von's music in the middle of a neighborhood. Now, it was probably late night now. I bet nobody was out there. But that's how fucked up the internet has people's minds. It's like, you going to choose sides in a beef that you had nothing to do with and disrespect. Like King Von, like we was talking about, he killed a lot of people from that street and from that gang. And you're going to go, you have nothing to do with anything when you're going to go in a territory and play this man's music. It's just stupid. Like, you're dumb. You're an idiot.
Yeah. Not from 63rd. Yes. Undeniably, when he says that in his songs, like, it hits. It's
a banger, but you have to keep it in context. Like,
right.
You have to keep it in context. There are many people from 63rd that lost their lives in that war.
For sure. Yeah. If his lyrics were about like a movie, right? Or if it were a soundtrack to a movie, right, and he's talking about events that happened not featuring real people, then you could listen to it and be like, yeah. Then you like sing along to it.
Holy wait.
Yeah, I hate the 63rd. I hate 63rd Street in this movie, in this context, not full. Like, if you can separate that from actual reality.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard because think about being a mother that lost his son to that war, and you always have to hear, I ain't from 63rd, or smoking on Tuka, rest in peace. Like, Tuka was a dude that died in that war, and you had rappers that didn't have anything to do with that beef saying I'm smoking on Tuka. It's just like mad disrespectful, but that's the scary line when it gets melded with entertainment and reality, which is like, I couldn't imagine being like a mother.
Yeah,
that's wild.
Tuka was 15. He was a 15-year-old kid, got shot up at a bus stop, and then next thing you know, within a couple months, you've got rappers all across the country making fun of him dying at a bus stop by getting shot.
Without even knowing that they're making fun of him too. You know what I'm saying? It's wild.
Do you think foreign governments are backing different sides of street beefs? Like, remember we were talking before about the train that stopped? And like, look, we back different groups that are like having beefs per se overseas, but like
Contras.
Yeah. What if we have foreign governments backing?
You think Putin? You think Putin is like funneling guns?
Like the 63rd, like
Putin,
they choose to decide.
Putin's supplying arms to the gangster disciples versus the black disciples.
What if in a rap, one guy's like, shout out Putin?
Yeah.
Keeping us stocked.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past foreign governments or our government to do any kind of nefarious, because like you hear Glasses say, it's like, guns is expensive.
Yeah,
and some of the guns that these cats have is wild. So it's like, you know, could they be making some street money, some dope money? Maybe, I don't know, but it's how much guns are involved, and I don't know. I like poking the conspiracy bear every now and then, but I always tend to lean toward the side of evidence. I haven't looked up enough of it to make any kind of determination, but I wouldn't put it past our government. We've done it before, literally, with other places in the world.
Yeah, gang members
YouTube
being like,
money?
I'm smoking on that Zelensky pack. I mean, listen, I want to let Billy cook on this one. I want to find out where all these guns came from.
Hey, you put you a little press jacket on and go to these neighborhoods and try to get to the bottom where the guns coming from. I'm with you, dog.
I'd wear a vest. I'd get in there. But I mean, imagine if like the Ukrainian army starts making drill rap about Russia.
They probably are.
Yeah,
they're very mean.
It would probably be a little like
what's the language in Ukraine?
Ukrainian. It's probably like it's probably like EDM.
That should be EDM drill.
Yeah, EDM drill in Ukrainian. And they're like,
those are hard people.
Something I also read about is how that mass incarceration proliferated, like a lot of the gang ideologies to just for protection in prison, and then when they'd get out, they would be in charge of recruiting more people. And that's what they're saying. They're like, 2 dudes met in Rikers and started like why the Bloods is so there's so many more Bloods on the East Coast is because of that one meeting in Rikers amongst 2 Bloods from California.
I mean, it could be. Like I said, the lore accelerated the spread of it, but also a lot of the things, like you would go, like cats would get locked up, and you literally had to choose sides. Like prison, we set it up. We were gonna do it, but something didn't fall through. But we're gonna do an episode on prison gangs and the culture of prison in general.
Yeah.
Very, very similar. It's like when you go in there, you got to choose sides because it's very race related. And a lot of prisons, some prisons not so much, but like a lot of these prisons is race related. So like you'll have white people, you gotta go with the Arians. You got black folks who got to choose BMF, all these prison gangs, and then you get out, and that's what you is, and that's what Glasses alluded to. He's like some regular dude who was in our neighborhood. He would go to prison or whatever, and he came back, and now he one of us 6 months later, and so it's like it's a very real dynamic of it as well. And also like all those men, like in the freest country in the world, we have the most people incarcerated, a lot for these drug problems, right? And so those are fathers, right? So when you have a bunch of kids with no fathers, no guidance, it's a problem.
This is Yarmak. The song's called Get Up.
I found the Ukrainian soldier rapper.
This is the first comment is greetings from Polish. Kiev, Warsaw, always together. Ukraine, never give up.
We don't have to play more music.
Who was them cats? It was like, I tried so hard.
Yeah, Linkin Park.
To lose it all. They sound like Linkin Park, bro.
A little bit, yeah.
Hey, what happened? What happened to white people music, man? What happened to like Green Day? What happened to that, man? Niggas be like, you know what I'm saying? I'm sitting in my room. I'm so frustrated. Like that kind of shit. What happened to that kind of music, bro?
I think it got people too angry and against the system.
They all just post on Reddit now. They don't write songs.
Woodstock 99 happened.
What they said.
I used to fuck with Green Day, man. I used to fuck with Green Day. I used to fuck with all that shit. Metallica. I used to fuck with all that shit.
Yeah,
white people don't make music like that anymore.
Dude,
they make a whole bunch of
Metallica
trap music.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know what happened. I think it was like the record companies like realized that, you know, like one-hit wonders were more like profitable than actually having like a maintained artist over time.
Stacey Oracle. Stacey Oracle, Stuck, was one of my favorite songs ever, dog. I fucking love that song, dog.
I think I know what happened.
I can't get out of bed today. That shit was my jam.
Weed got too strong. It took away all white people's angst. We're too chill now. We just want to make those hi-hats tickle faster. Yeah, okay. I want to be Drake. Every white guy wants to be Drake now. Just write songs about how you can't get a girlfriend. That's what we do best.
Yeah, there's no more like, and the thing is, all the new rock is just way too hard. It's like, okay, dude, it's like worship the devil type stuff.
I haven't gotten into much new. Well, also it could just be that
Send me that.
The new stuff.
That could be the case too. Yeah. Send me some white shit that's popping right now.
Have you seen a 5 Finger Death Punch?
I've not. That's why I said send it to me.
Yeah, I got you.
I don't check for it.
Basically, every song that you like, you stop listening to new music when you're about 32 years old.
I can only work out to that music.
I still search.
You can't socially listen to a lot of
this
music.
day. I will. If somebody at the gas station and they be like, "Yo, man, check my CD out" or whatever. I mean, they haven't done that for CDs, but like, I remember vividly like being 30-something. CD, USB. Here's my USB. Let me check me out. I will absolutely check you out. I found a lot of dope. As a matter of fact, there's a dude named Westside Boogie who's actually a blood from LA. I found his video, and the video had like 1,700 views on it. Right? It was just, and this was when I was in the NFL. And I listened. I loved it. I retweeted. I gave him all support. And now he's like signed to Eminem. And I'm not saying I didn't have anything to do with it. I'm just saying he's a talented ass artist that I just found with nothing. Another dude who's on my last album, Marlon Craft, I found one of his videos when he didn't really have a big following. Now he has like 2 million monthly Spotify listeners. So like, and I still dudes that I listen to who don't have any monthly listeners to that I love their music. I love music. I love artistic expression. I don't fuck where it comes from. I know I joke a lot about white folks. I have an eclectic white library, Mexican music. I just love good music. I will listen to anything, dog. I will listen to anything if it's good.
You know what? EDM. That's what happened to white music.
Yeah,
That's
you're right.
yeah.
Computers.
I've just been looking through it. Yeah. EDM.
Yeah, you might be right, dog.
That's what happened.
That's something I really have not got into, man. It's like PFT. Remember this when we was growing up? It was like that rave shit.
Techno.
Cats like would listen to that like when techno. They would go to raves, but there was one of those that was a banger. That what is it? Zombie Nation something 2000.
Yeah.
That was fire. That was fire. I used to love that one growing up.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. This has been a good episode. I've enjoyed the discussion.
Yeah, I liked it.
I enjoyed it a lot. I guess we'll see you guys next week. Nanodosing and macrodosing. And until then, I love you guys. Stay handsome, stay gorgeous, stay out of trouble, or get in perfectly the right amount of trouble. That's an order. Love you guys.